2025 is here, a brand new year full of possibilities. But you know something? I'm not done talking about 2024. Here on Thorgy's Arcade, we love fighting games, and each year in January, we like to look back at the previous year and run down everything from the world of fisticuffs. Because if you've been here for a while, you know that this channel is mostly dedicated to talking about older games or the history of fighting games. But there's tons of new games or stories that come out every single year, and I have thoughts on them. So this is my chance to run through all of that. But also, as beloved as fighting games are, it feels like most people don't pay any attention to them beyond just a handful of big releases or whatever the current argument of the week is. And this year, that's more true than ever. Towards the end of 2024, I saw so many videos of people saying, what went wrong with fighting games in 2024? Or 2024, the most disappointing year for fighting games? And listen, I ain't here to start any beef, but I have zero idea what these people are talking about. Don't get me wrong, was it the best year for fighting games? No, not even close. There were indeed problems. There were flops and there were controversies, and we're going to talk about all of that. But this was the year where I entered my weird FGC dad phase, because I heard people saying they were bored with fighting games, and I thought, you're bored? What do you mean you're bored? There's dozens of games to play, how can you be bored? Like, it's weird seeing people at the end of 2024 saying fighting games were bad this year, but they only played like 2 of them, and they have thousands of hours in each of them. Guys, I assure you, fighting games weren't bad in 2024. You just burned yourself out on the same ones over and over again. It would be like if a bunch of food YouTubers said burgers were bad in 2024, and then you found out that they only went to one restaurant and ate their burgers every single day. There is so much that happened in 2024. When I actually stopped and ran through the entire year, I was shocked at how much came out. How many big stories blew up the FGC, how many major titles got released, but also how many small titles kind of just went under everyone's radars. And today, we're going to take one last look back at all of it. Okay, not all of it. Just like last year when we did this, there's a few things that we are going to leave out because otherwise we would be here all day. I'm not going to talk about any tournaments simply because there's dozens of them and there's rarely any big news stories that drop during them. And we'll be talking about brand new game releases, new DLC releases, and if a new game gets announced, we'll cover that as well. But if a game has already been announced and we just get updates on it, yeah, I'm not bringing that up. We all know Fatal Fury City of the Wolves is on its way. I don't need to stop every 2 months to mention this character got announced. So if we already know a game is coming, unless something huge is announced that nobody saw coming, that won't get covered. Same thing goes for updates to existing games. If a brand new character gets added to a game, I will cover that, but if it's just a simple balance patch for a game, unless that balance patch ended up breaking the entire game, I'm not going to talk about it. That being said, there were actually multiple balance patches this year that ended up breaking the entire game. It's actually kind of shocking how many times it happened. But alright, that's enough build up, and looking through all my notes, 2024 was an even bigger year for releases and news stories than 2023. So let's go ahead and kick things off with January. The year kicked off with Street Fighter 6 doing a crossover with Spy Family. We got the announcement for it at the end of 2023, but we had no idea what it was going to be until January, where it turned out it was exactly what we all feared it was going to be: another Fighter's Pass and costumes for your avatars. Yeah, listen, I'm not nearly as obsessed with new costumes in Street Fighter as everybody else is. I'm totally fine with us just getting 3 costumes for every character. I don't need anything beyond that. Plus, considering how much detail goes into every animation in this game and how much work they put into these costumes, I get that they can't just keep pumping them out like they did back with Street Fighter V. But at the same time, I get why people were disappointed with this. Based on the reveal trailer, so many people thought, oh, they're going to make special costumes for the fighters. And that seemed like a smart idea. I mean, Street Fighter, I know your fan base. A Your Forger costume for Chun-Li would have printed money for you. But instead, it was another costume for your avatar. Yeah, that felt like they kinda yanked the football away from everyone. From the world of DLC, Chameleon was added as an assist to Mortal Kombat 1. I didn't try her out, but I do love that they're making some really deep cuts with their assist characters. That's actually pretty cool. Then Naruto Cross Boruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Connections add Hogoromo Otsutsuki. I apologize because I probably mispronounced that. Hey, remember last year when I mentioned every JoJo's character that got added to their fighting game and I had no idea who half of them were? Yeah, that's a sneak peek at the Naruto DLC this year. I like Naruto, but towards the end of that series, a lot of the characters started merging together for me or being forgotten, and yeah, this is one of them. Then looking beyond just official releases, a demo for the fan game Sega vs. Capcom dropped. This is insane, because for anyone who doesn't know, Sega vs. Capcom almost happened back in the 2000s. Or at least Sammy vs. Capcom, Sammy being Sega's parent company. So people have wanted to see this for generations. But the other reason this is nuts, as I said, this is a fan game. But it's not a simple Mugen where they took existing sprites. No, these characters are all 3D models they built themselves. This is a massive undertaking, and they've kept updating it throughout the year with brand new demos every couple of months, so make sure to check it out if you're interested. Then there's a game that I've been following called Beast of Mystery. It's still very early on, but it's all about cryptids, so as a fan of monster fighting games, I'm immediately interested in it. Well, in January, they put out a demo for it on itch.io, and again, they've continued to update it throughout the year. But there were two big releases in January, the first one being Under Night In-Birth 2, which is really weird to say because Under Night In-Birth went the Street Fighter 2 route. It had so many updates, and every single update was treated as a brand new installment. So when I first saw that this game was going to be called Under Night In-Birth 2, I was like, oh, really? We're actually doing this now? Oh, okay, cool. Now, I really like Under Night. It's got really distinct character designs, fast-paced gameplay, amazing music, and the combat is simple to pick up and learn because your three main buttons all link together. But if you want to actually get into the game and learn the nitty-gritty, yeah, this game is deep. The tutorials for Under Night are notoriously huge because there is so much that you can do in this game. And when you watch high-level footage of it, you can feel the equations flying past the players' faces as they try and work everything out. And picking up Under Night 2, I'll admit I haven't put enough time into it to really see everything that has changed. We do have an Under Night retrospective coming up later this year, so I'll make sure to get deeper into the game then to learn everything that I need to. But even with the little time that I did spend on it, I can tell you, it's not hugely different. It still feels like Under Night, but it is different enough to feel like a sequel. And from what I've heard, Under Night fans seem to be okay with this. People who were really into the previous game are still enjoying this one. And they introduced a handful of new characters, and from the little time that I did get to play them, yeah, they're pretty cool. However, I can't help but feel like Under Night In-Birth 2 kinda snuck under the radar for a lot of players out there. Maybe that's because it's a niche franchise, maybe it's because the combat is really complicated, so it isn't for everyone. Or maybe it's because Under Night In-Birth 2 had one of the worst release schedules I've ever seen for a fighting game. Because sure, if you got the special edition, you got to play it a few days early. But for everyone else, the game officially launched on January 26. Guess what else came out that exact same day? This is stunning to me. Why would anyone launching a fighting game put that game out on the exact same day as the biggest fighting game release of the year? If you were going to make a superhero movie and it was a smaller movie with a smaller budget, but you had a plucky fan base and you wanted to finally reach out to a wider audience, you wouldn't put that superhero movie out on the exact same day as Endgame. I've heard a lot of people try to argue, well, it's not like there's a huge overlap between Tekken and Under Night players. They're two different types of fighting games. Yes, they are indeed two different types of fighting games. There will certainly be people who are fans of one type, but not the other. But there are still tons of people out there who are just general fighting game fans. Traditional 2D fighters, 3D fighters, faster anime fighters. Yeah, there are people out there who are into all of that. They might have a preference, they might not like them all evenly, but they do dabble in all the various fighting genres. And all of those players went to Tekken. And secondly, Under Night's got a very dedicated fan base, but that fan base isn't huge. It is a niche game. And it's mostly niche because, yeah, a lot of people just don't know about it. Do you know what could change that? If a bunch of fighting game YouTubers and streamers who cover whatever the new game is had to say, it's been a while since a brand new game came out. Oh, what's this? A new Under Night? Well, there's nothing else going on. I can do a week of talking about this. If you had released this game during a fighting game drought, months after the last big title came out, there would have been so many people happy to check this game out and stream it or make videos on it. And all of that potential free advertising they could have gotten through this was gone the second they said, let's put it out the same day as Tekken 8. And what's really crazy to me is that typically these games launch around fiscal quarters and fiscal years. You want to get your game out before the end of the fiscal year. The fiscal year ends in March. Unless something else was going on behind the scenes that I don't know about, I don't understand why you couldn't just say, oh, Tekken 8 is coming out on that exact same day. Push it back 2 months. Give it some time, let the air clear out, and then we'll drop it within the fiscal year so that way we're still safe. This is truly perplexing to me, and yeah, as I said, Under Night is a niche game even within the fighting game community. But thanks to content creators, I feel like a lot of fighting games are growing. Heck, we've seen that with games like Guilty Gear Strive, which did better than pretty much every other Guilty Gear combined. We're living in a time when more niche games have a better chance to be seen. And Under Night had an opportunity to take advantage of that, and they kinda shot themselves in the foot. Well, let's now do what everyone else did in January and stop talking about Under Night and start talking about Tekken 8. You guys don't need any introduction to this game. People have been waiting for a new Tekken for years, and I gotta say, I think they knocked it out of the park. I'll admit, I always played Tekken casually. It was always that pick up and play game for me where I just hit buttons and I never really tried to learn all that much. It wasn't until Tekken 7 that I started trying to actually take it seriously and figure out all the ins and outs of the game. So keeping that in mind, knowing that's where I'm coming from, I think Tekken 8 is amazing. Again, need to clarify, when it comes to playing online, my experience with Tekken isn't that big, but online, offline, whatever, this is the most fun I have ever had playing a Tekken. I love the more aggressive combat. I know some people are turned off on that, but after Tekken 7, I do appreciate they spiced it up more. The heat mode is a lot of fun, but it doesn't change the game so much that I look at it and say, hey, this isn't Tekken anymore. And the online, sure, I've had a few matches that weren't great, but those tended to always be against people on Wi-Fi, so yeah, I don't think you can blame Tekken for that. But outside of those matches, playing online actually feels good now. The game looks great with amazing stages and so much character customization. It feels like all the people at Bandai Namco who handled the character creation in Soul Calibur just picked themselves up and moved over to Tekken. Because I remember seeing so many people online just creating characters from animes and movies and other games with these crazy customization options. And the music is amazing. I really like Tekken 7's soundtrack, but I do know a lot of people didn't vibe with it. But I think everyone pretty much agrees Tekken 8's soundtrack is great. And there aren't a ton of new characters, but they're all really good, with Reina of course being the big breakout star. She's been in one game and she's already a major face for this series. People who don't even play Tekken know who Reina is. And the story mode? I hate talking about the quality of story modes in fighting games because either you have to put in there the disclaimer, oh it's good, for a fighting game, or there are people who think all fighting game story modes suck and they will gladly fight you on that. But I actually think this story mode is really good. And I don't even mean that with the disclaimer, for a fighting game, I just think it's good. It took so much that had built up over the past couple games and brought them back in an excellent, satisfying way. Jin's whole journey is great, and yes, it is kind of weak of them to just sweep under the rug, oh yeah, didn't you do a bunch of war crimes? Yeah, they kinda just pushed that to the side and decided to ignore it for now. But outside of that, I love seeing how deep they went with Jin, just flat out saying he's not fighting just to beat his dad or save the world, he's fighting to live. They show how much his whole life has messed him up, and it makes you realize, yeah, he's been in a very dark place, and he has to now bring himself to admit he wants to live. That is some pretty heavy stuff to do with your character. And then that final showdown with Kazuya where you start pulling out the Mishima style, that is one of the smartest uses of the actual combat in a fighting game story mode ever. They actually use the combat in the game to show progression for the character. So yeah, again, I know it wasn't for everyone, several people prefer the slower, more defensive combat of 7, but Tekken 8 impressed me so much. I will say though, sadly, I did not put as much time into this game after that first month as I would have liked to, and that's partly because I got busy with other stuff. but also because, as I said, starting with Tekken 7, I actually started trying to learn how to play Tekken, and damn, Tekken is complicated, y'all. Each character has hundreds of moves, each good for different situations, and yeah, with Street Fighter or Guilty Gear, I go into training mode for a few minutes to loosen myself up before I go online to fight. But with Tekken 8, I need a full hour each day in training mode before I go online just to remind myself, okay, if this happens, do this. If that happens, do that. When I rose up to the higher ranks, it was taking so much to keep up with the other players, and almost every single match I found myself going, oh right, I forgot I can do this. That actually would have been the perfect thing to do in that situation. I guess what I'm trying to say is, Tekken players, you guys got some big brains. But I did return to it to get some footage for this video, and damn, yeah, I still love playing it. King in this game is one of the most fun characters I have ever played in any Tekken. So hey, January, pretty good start to the year. But now we come to February, and a couple of cracks are starting to appear. Don't get me wrong, there were still some good games and good DLC released this month, but there were also a couple of negatives popping up in here. Let's start with some positives. DLC this month was pretty good. Mr. Krabs got added to Nick All-Stars Brawl 2. I haven't played this game much, but last year when we did talk about it, I found myself really enjoying it. You can feel the love these devs had for these characters, and based on what I've seen of Mr. Krabs, yeah, that's still true. Again, I haven't played him, but I do love that he has a move where he swears and the dolphin sound effect comes out and hits the opponent. That's kind of genius. Also, they got Clancy Brown to come in here and record for this thing. I'm always happy to see Clancy Brown pop up anywhere. Then Peacemaker got added to Mortal Kombat 1. I'm not really that interested in the dark superhero theme Mortal Kombat is going for with this season. And also, MK's Online really turned me off last year. I didn't play the game after the first month, so I can't really comment on this DLC. Then for anybody who watched this video last year, remember that horror fighting game I brought up from 2023, Monstroscopy? Yeah, they added DLC this month. I did not expect this game to keep getting updates, but they added new characters all throughout the year. The first one being Kakumon, who is this big robot, and Monstroscopy is meant to look like an old 50s horror movie. Mission accomplished on Kakumon. He looks like some guy in a giant cardboard robot costume covered in tinfoil. I love it. Then lastly, Ed got added to Street Fighter 6. I love that they took his symbol inputs from the last game and just said, yeah, that's just how he'll play in modern mode. We're going to change that for classic mode. Very smart move, and I will admit, I haven't tried him out yet, but unlike Street Fighter 5, I actually want to try out Ed now. I've watched so many people play him, and he actually looks really fun, so I do plan on eventually getting to him. But the other big news with Street Fighter is that with Ed's release, this game, after almost a year, finally got its first big balance patch. Yeah, I couldn't believe this. I had to go back and double check, and sure enough, all the updates before this simply said bug fixes and minor updates. This is the first one where they actually made huge changes. And I know a lot of people have complained about this over the year. Why did it take them so long to make a balance update? But I gotta be honest with you, this is a much larger issue that should probably be its own video. But I feel like these days, a lot of fighting game devs have a hair trigger when it comes to updates. Like, if people are complaining about something, they have to go in and fix it now. But I think most devs don't understand, just because people on the internet complain, doesn't mean your game is broken. I hate saying that because I know what it sounds like, but the internet is a vast sea of voices with different opinions. If you constantly have your ear to it, yeah, you will always hear people complaining about something. And don't get me wrong, if something is indeed broken or bugged in your game, get in there and fix it as soon as you can. But if people are just like, hey, this one move is too good, well, ask yourself, is it so good it breaks the game? No? Well, then maybe that's not so bad. Fighting games will always be unbalanced. No matter how hard you try to adjust it and even it out, they will always have moves that are just better than others. The important thing isn't, is the game balanced? It's, is the game fun? If the balance problem keeps it from being fun, like let's say 80% of players are all picking the same one busted character, then yes, adjust it. But if the game is still fun, it's okay to look at that audience saying something is busted and telling them, okay, learn to deal with it. And that's kind of what the Street Fighter devs did. Heck, I am a Zangief player, And for the entire first year, he was the worst character in the game. But he was still really fun. So, I was fine learning how to deal with that. That being said, when Gief got buffed in this balance patch, oh, I was happy. I had been struggling to get him out of gold for a week at this point, then this balance patch hit and I got him to platinum in literally an hour. So yeah, like I said, I'm not going to talk about balance patches this year unless it's something worth noting. And I just had to come in here and point out, I'm very impressed with the restraint of the Street Fighter devs being willing to say, we know some people are complaining about some things in this game, but those things are not worth rushing out a massive update. You can all wait until it's ready. Although, speaking of adding an update to a game that took its sweet time, this month Dragon Ball FighterZ finally got its rollback update. People have been waiting for this for so long. We thought they forgot about it, it had been so long. But it's finally here. And it is...
No way. Does the monkey stay on screen? Nah, there's no way. Run. No. Move back. There's no way.
A mixed bag, because yes, it now ran smooth. Well, smoother, let's say. It was pretty good, but it also bugged the game out. There were hilarious compilations of T-posing characters or Shinron just sticking around after you summon out the Dragon Balls. This thing looks so unpolished after this update. How could this happen? I mean, Arc System Works knows how to implement rollback netcode. They're arguably the best when it comes to that. Well, this game was made by Arc System Works, but it was produced by Bandai Namco. And from what I've heard, it looks like Bandai Namco tried to implement the rollback in the game themselves. They didn't go back to ArcSys for that. And yeah, I can't be certain that's what happened, but it sure looks like that's what happened. And speaking of Bandai updates this month that left a bad taste in people's mouths, Tekken 8 added an in-game store which required real-world money. And I saw so many people mad about this, because this game gives you so much in-game currency for playing, and you can't use that currency in this brand new store. Now, I'll admit, I'm not upset that you can't use the in-game currency in this new store, because there's tons of other stores in this game where you can use that currency. There's still a ton of stuff that you can use that currency to buy. So I don't really have a problem with the fact that you can't use it in this store. The problem I have is that this wasn't in the game at launch. And there are a lot of critics out there who will give your game a worse score if you have a store in there asking for real-world money. And there are a ton of people out there who get addicted to this stuff, and they realize that, so they won't buy a game if there's a store in there asking for real-world money. So Tekken 8 came out, didn't have this in-game store. Then Bandai Namco said, okay, so you guys are all done giving us positive reviews now, and you've already bought millions of copies of the game. That's great! Unleash the in-game store. Yeah, it is a sleazy tactic that a lot of big studios love to do, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened here. And while we're talking about updates, from the world of fan games, we all know that Marvel vs. Capcom 3 has been getting carried by modders. They've been adding tons of new characters to this game over the last year. However, so far, they've only been able to create fighters by taking moves from other existing characters and Frankensteining them together. But this month, a huge breakthrough happened when modders started showing that they could now import moves from other games, meaning soon they would be able to start creating totally new characters. Very good news for anyone who has been following this scene, and it opens up so much potential for the future. And when it comes to upcoming development, this month the League of Legends fighting game, which until now had simply been referred to as Project L, finally got a name. And people weren't too big on it. It would be called 2XKO, which sounds needlessly complicated. Like, that name does not roll off your tongue, it aggressively tries to trip your tongue up. However, as much as people hated this name when it was announced, it's been 10 months since then, and yeah, I think most people have just accepted it. I saw people saying, I'm never going to call it 2XKO, and now 2 months later, guess what? They're calling it 2XKO. So yeah, it's bad, but not so bad that we can't get used to it. But let's move on to the actual new releases this month. BlazBlue Entropy Effect released. Not a fighting game, but a spin-off to a fighting game, so I still wanted to mention it. I haven't played it yet, but I have heard it's actually a pretty decent roguelike. However, as for actual new fighting games, well, first off, from the indie world, Murfight officially came off of early access and got its full release. For anyone who hasn't been following it, Murfight is a fighting game where you play as fish people. I've said before and I'll say it again, indie games really are keeping the wild and wacky spirit of the 90s fighting game scene alive. I backed this game on Kickstarter, so I had access to it for a while, and yeah, it's actually pretty good. The combat is simple enough to pick up and figure out, but it's got a decent variety between the characters. It's definitely a fighting game where different players can find characters who mechanically speak to them. And I do enjoy how much they lean to the theme of the game. Like, there's 3 or 4 different intros that you can have before the round starts, and each of them are references to other fighting game intros, but now they're turned into some kind of a fish pun. And when it comes to the actual gameplay, whenever you hit the opponent, little bubbles will appear, and I thought those were just there for show. But no, if you go around and collect the bubbles, it actually increases your super meter. It's a small detail, but it really adds to the flavor of the game. I appreciate that. And you know what? Despite being such a weird little game, I've seen it getting so much attention. This has actually been a success on the tournament scene, and hey, good for them. So check it out, it's a pretty special little title, and I'm glad to see it doing so well. Can't say the same thing for the other fighting game released this month, Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash. Holy cow, this game. Quick question, how many of you forgot this game came out? Because I guarantee it's probably more than half of you. Listen, for these videos, I try to play each of the games that I talk about so that way I have something to say about them. And I'm even a Jujutsu Kaisen fan. And yet, even I looked at this game and said, nah, I'm good. Yes, you shouldn't judge a game without playing it, but every bit of footage that I saw of this game looked like a lazy, poorly thought out cash grab. Just one of those, this series is popular now, get a game out before the hype dies down situation. And every person I've seen who played it said, yeah, this game is trash. This reminds me of the anime tie-in games that we were getting back in the PS2 days when you just had to have something out there. And this sure is something. Or maybe it's not. The big complaint that I heard from everyone, outside of the weak combat, is that it also came with very little content compared to other fighting games out there now. I heard so many people saying this game should only have cost $30, not full priced. Now, there was one more bit of DLC that dropped this month, and one more announcement, and I saved them for the end because they kinda tie into each other. In 2023, Them's Fighting Herds announced it was going to do a season of DLC characters. The first 2 came out that year, but the remaining 2, Baihei and Nidra, both of them dropped this month at the exact same time. Hey, that's a nice surprise. 2 characters at once? Who wouldn't love that? Anyone who played Them's Fighting Herds because they completely broke the game, and I don't mean, oh, they were really strong, so they were broken. No, I mean they actually broke the game. They had infinite combos, they caused slowdowns, freezes, flat-out crashes, and so much more. So they were immediately banned from all tournaments, but what if you weren't playing in tournaments? You just wanted to go online and play some matches. Well, too bad for you. And here's the thing. If you'll remember from last year, the team behind this game, Main 6, they said they were done with this game after this DLC. They weren't even going to be able to fulfill all the Kickstarter goals. They sadly would be ending development on this game early. Well, I talked about that in last year's video, but I have to apologize because I did not know the full story when I did that. I thought they just ran out of money. Maybe the DLC was their last chance to try and bring in some funds that they needed, and they just couldn't make it work. Well, turns out the truth of the matter is, in 2022, Them's Fighting Herds was bought by Modus Games, which is a subdivision of Maximum Entertainment, which is the name an 80s movie villain would give their company in an attempt to make it sound cool. Well, Maximum Entertainment bought Main 6, and they're the ones who told them not to work on the story content that they had promised, and instead work on a season of DLC. Because sadly, we are living in the age of the live service fighting games, and if something can be a live service, it's going to attract just the worst people in the gaming industry. If you're a greedy corporate goon who doesn't care about your product and just wants a continuous stream of money, you will go to a live service like a moth to a flame. So Maximum Entertainment told Main 6 to stop working on that story content to make a season of DLC. Then halfway through it, I guess not enough people were buying it, so they just told them, finish up the final 2 characters that you're legally required to make, and then pack all your stuff in a box and get out. And sure enough, when you tell developers to rush on the final 2 characters because they're effectively already fired, yeah, of course they're going to come out in a broken state. Now, a month after this, Maximum Entertainment realized these broken characters effectively killed any future sales of the game, so they asked some of the main 6 team to come back and please fix it, at which point Maximum Entertainment told them once again to pack all their stuff in a box and please get out. And from what I understand, yes, they did end up fixing the problem with these characters and they are now playable. But still, this is such a sad end for this game. This thing was a labor of love, it was something truly unique, it had some really good gameplay, and the story of its development is wild. This was a fan game that against all odds became its own original property. And this is how it ends. It went from friendship is magic to greed is good. God dang it, that's depressing. Well, in brighter news, the last story I wanted to share from February was that out of nowhere, an Avatar: The Last Airbender fighting game was announced. Yeah, one day out of nowhere, a game studio was just having a live stream of its upcoming projects, and out of nowhere, they just said, oh yeah, by the way, we're making an Avatar game anyway, and then they moved on. This is crazy, and it's a perfect idea. I've been thinking about making a video for a while on the top 10 franchises that need a fighting game, and if I ever made that, Avatar would be way up there at the top. There are so many great characters and settings and unique moves and fighting styles. It is perfect for a fighting game. Hey, who's developing it?
Hi, I'm Christina Seeley, CEO of Maximum Entertainment. Welcome to our first showcase of 2024.
My apologies to the Avatar fans. You do not deserve to be treated this way. March kicks off with, again, a whole bunch of DLC. Monk comes to DNF Duel, and he was the second to last character added into the game. I have some thoughts about DNF Duel, but you know what? I'll save that for when the final character gets released. Then Marie got added to Skullgirls. Yes, after all these years, over a decade later, Skullgirls finally let you play as the boss of the game. And just like everything else in Skullgirls, Marie has awesome animations to her attacks. I love that she can just throw out a spirit bomb because why not? Also, this was the final DLC character for their season, and it does make me wonder how well this DLC sold. It makes me wonder what the reception could mean for the future of this game. Do they have more characters planned, or is this effectively the end of a game that's been getting continuous updates for a decade now? It'll be interesting to see what, if anything, is next for Skullgirls. Then Naruto Cross Boruto got a second DLC pack. Now, as I said, I don't know much about the later characters, especially the characters from Boruto, but I still know a decent amount about this series, so as long as this new character isn't some chalky white dude who fights with shapes, then I should be going, aw, that's a shame. Well, one bit of DLC I can talk about is ABBA came to Guilty Gear Strive. I said this last year, but it really feels like the first 2 seasons of DLC were Daisuke saying, here's the characters I need in here for story reasons. And this season was 100% the because you asked for it season. Every character this season was high up there on the poll that they put out asking people who they wanted. And I'll say this right now, ABBA is so not my kind of character mechanically. She's almost like a stance fighter or an install character where she's got a state that she can enter giving her brand new abilities and moves, which is something that I never really mess around with. But I do have to say I love what they did with her when it comes to her presentation. I think her new look is great, the voice actor nailed her, and she's one of the best animated characters in the game. And this is a game with a lot of well-animated characters. Like, go frame by frame when she does her super move. It is stunning the amount of details in there. But most importantly, people actually seemed really happy with her. Yeah, I brought this up last year, but for the first 2 years of Strive's life, I heard people complain about pretty much everything. But for Season 3, I don't know if the new adjustments to the game won people over. I don't know if everyone's anger just died down. I don't know if it's just everyone is now happy that Xrd has rollback so they don't have to complain about that anymore. Or maybe it's just that everyone is happy that all their favorite characters are now in the game. But I have seen so much positivity for this game throughout this entire season. Then Gigabash got an update that's worth talking about. If you've never heard me talk about Gigabash, it is this insanely fun arena party fighter. If you are a kaiju fan, you need to check this game out. And I keep thinking the game is done, And then suddenly the developers come in here out of nowhere with something big. And in March, they add new maps, new mechanics, new variations on how to fight that can make the game extra wacky. I am so impressed with the Gigabash team. All the flowers to the Gigabash team. Not only is the game fun, but you can feel this team is running on pure passion. They love this game, and it shows. Then, as I said, I'm not going to cover all the updates that we got to Fatal Fury City of the Wolves because there's just too many, but I do have to show it some love, so I'll just remind everyone that was this month that we got the official announcement trailer along with a whole bunch of character reveals, and yeah, this game looks amazing. I can't wait for it to finally come out. We also learned for the very first time ever, a Fatal Fury game is going to have an English dub. And I need to hear way more of this to be able to form an opinion, but so far, it seems alright. None of them are really blowing me away, but none of them are really bad either. They're kind of just okay so far. But again, we haven't seen much. I need to hear way more to form an opinion. And there was one more game that we all knew was coming that got an official announcement this month. MultiVersus, after being gone for almost a year, announced it would be returning. With like zero fanfare or anything. Like, people were wondering, okay, is this thing dead? Is it gone? Did Zaslav can it for a tax write-off? And then out of nowhere, they made a post on Twitter that just said, Taps mic, testing, 1, 2, 3. And then they made more posts over the days counting down to some big reveal. They were treating this like it was going to blow everyone's minds. The second coming of MultiVersus. Then the actual announcement was a big load of nothing. Yeah, this was one of the weakest announcements for a big game I've seen in a while, and I'll admit, I am holding them to a higher standard than most simply because, yes, people were mad at how they ran that beta or whatever the hell you want to call it. So they didn't just need to announce a new game, they had to win people back. There was a lot this announcement needed to do, and I don't think it did it. And before I go any further, let me just say, I will indeed be saying some negative stuff about MultiVersus all throughout this video, but I don't blame the developers at all. No, if anything goes wrong at Warner Brothers now, or anytime in the near future, we all know that's the fault of the people at the top. So no shade being thrown at the actual developers, I am not blaming the people who actually worked on the game, I just want to make that clear. But that being said, this announcement had to blow people's minds, and yeah, they kinda missed the mark. They just said, yeah, we're back, the game returns on this date. Then they announced the game had a brand new netcode and brand new PvE mode. But we didn't get to see that PvE mode, so that meant nothing. And then they said they updated the game from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5. And I'm sorry, again, this is one of those things that clearly had to have been a mandate from someone at the top, because that was totally unnecessary. They showed the two models standing side by side with each other, and it is so the corporate wants you to find the difference in these photos joke. Updating to Unreal 5 must have been tons of work, and you can tell it's just because the guys at the top thought, well, better graphics mean more sales, right? Not realizing that with MultiVersus' art style, updating to Unreal 5 accomplished practically nothing. It's wild to me how many people want to be the next Smash Bros, but they don't realize what makes Smash Bros work. Think about those big reveal trailers for Smash Bros and how they help to amp everyone up for these games. Now imagine if instead of that, Masahiro Sakurai just appeared one day on a live stream and said, yes, Smash Bros is back. There's a brand new mode in it. You don't get to see that. And then they showed you a photo of Mario, and he looked exactly like he did in the last game. When MultiVersus officially came back a few months after this, they did have a big new trailer showing off some surprising new characters, and it was actually pretty good. Why didn't you show that during this press conference? Why wasn't that the announcement trailer? You knew what to do, just not when to do it. I know someone might say, well, that trailer probably wasn't ready when they had to make this announcement. Then push the announcement back. Do not make your announcement before you have something cool to show people. Oh well, again, this was just the announcement of the game coming back. We'll talk more about MultiVersus in a few months when it officially returns. Fingers crossed it turned out okay. I say that writing this in the future, already knowing the answer. April arrives, bringing with it, get this, more DLC. Zugo joins Nick All-Star Brawl 2, Vayne joins Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising. Haven't played Vayne, but I have played against him, and he seems like a pretty good big bruiser. On the indie game front, Monstroscopy got a second DLC character, Toshiro Murayama. He's got a sword, a trench coat, and a dog. That's all I need to hear. I'm sold. As far as new games go, a free-to-play game called Super Dragon Punch Force 3 launched. I didn't play it because I didn't play Super Dragon Punch Force 1 or 2 and I didn't want to get spoiled. I'm kidding, there actually was no Super Dragon Punch Force 2. At least, not in the real world. Yeah, get this, there's a movie out there called Boy Kills World. And in that movie, there's a fictional arcade game called Super Dragon Punch Force 2. And that is where this game comes from. It is all a reference to that movie. So if someone ever asks you, what's the most obscure movie tie-in game? You now have a new answer. Then this month saw the release of indie game Train Track Combat. You ever see a game and think, what was the story with this development? Train Track Combat features 4 characters who are just riding on a train. And you fight at a train stop. And the announcer speaks almost entirely in train references. I have no idea why this was made. Was the developer a big fan of trains? Did they work as a conductor during their day job? Or were they just looking for an idea one day while riding the train and they looked around and said, got it? I don't know, but what I do know is this game is actually pretty fun. It's simple, but that's not a bad thing. Combos have some pretty nutty possibilities and plenty of air juggles, which I do enjoy. And it only costs $2.50. I have played games that cost 10 times this much that I didn't get half as much enjoyment out of. It's on itch.io, and at that price, it's a steal. So if you got some buddies who just want a fun, simple fighting game to mess around with, give it a shot and make sure to give the dev a nice little tip while you're at it. Then as for announcements, EXA Arcadia announced that it would be releasing a brand new version of the early 2000s fighting game Rage of the Dragons called Rage of the Dragons W. For anyone who doesn't know about EXA Arcadia, they make tons of arcade games that are all basically just new versions of older titles. They've helped to publish so many games that were forgotten, but now with brand new characters or new balance updates. And beyond that, they've also helped out a ton of indie fighting games and helped to publish their games in the arcades. They're really making a push to try and bring back the fighting game arcade scene of the 90s. Unfortunately, they're only trying to bring back the Japanese arcade scene because they are not fans of porting any of these games to any other country. I talked to someone who knows far more about them than I do, and they told me that Arcadia wants to reignite the Japanese arcade scene, and hey, I'm all for that. But apparently they only want to bring back the Japanese arcade scene, like that's their main focus, they don't really care about any other country out there. And yeah, that's kind of a bummer, but hopefully this game and all their other titles will eventually get a worldwide release. But the big stories this month all came from Tekken. The good news, Eddie Gordo was released as their first DLC character, and Eddie is at full Eddie in this game. I have heard big Eddie Gordo fans say they are very happy with him, and as someone who has been smacked around by all his flipping and dipping online, yeah, I can see why. Unfortunately for this one good news story, there were 2 bad. Tekken 8 introduced a Battle Pass, and do I even need to tell you people were mad at it? First up, the pass costs $6 worth of the in-game currency, and you can only buy the in-game currency in increments of $5. Yep, it's that old strategy. You've all seen it before. This tactic is so common that the moment I said it cost $6, you all immediately knew you could only buy the in-game currency in $5 increments. And secondly, people just thought the Battle Pass rewards sucked. I remember people being particularly upset about the white sphere that was part of the Premium Pass. You spend $6 and days fighting to get up there on that Premium Pass, and your reward is just a big floating white ball. Now, personally, it doesn't bother me that much, but then again, I almost never go in for Battle Passes, so my opinion doesn't really matter that much on this one. The people who do buy Battle Passes, though, said it sucked, so I will default to them on this one. However, there was another news story from Tekken this month, and I can 100% say everyone thought this was awful. They introduced a big balance patch. Hey, remember when I was talking about Street Fighter earlier, and I said I think a lot of developers are so worried about balancing their game that sometimes in an attempt to fix something that wasn't broken, they can end up breaking it? Hey, guess what? This update was the exact thing that I was referencing. Tekken 8, yeah, sure, it wasn't balanced when it came out, because again, no fighting game is balanced. But it ran fine. Some characters were really good, but nobody was insanely broken. The game would have been fine as it was. But they came in here and they tried to fix all the little complaints that people had, and they broke the freaking game. I saw so many videos from people complaining about the balance in Tekken 8, telling Bandai Namco, fix this now, Bandai! And then the week this patch dropped, those exact same content creators were going out there with their hat in their hand saying, we're sorry, please put the game back how it was now. We'll learn how to deal with it. Just please undo all of this. Here's a quick rundown of some of the problems. For starters, the game has a system where each character has their own unique rank when you take them online. But when you rank up one character, the other characters would then have their ranks raised to a slightly lower level. So that way, if you were God tier with one character and you decide to pick up a brand new character, it wouldn't send you down to the very start. Well, with Eddie Gordo dropping this month, turns out the game didn't rank up the brand new character. Meaning, anyone who swapped to playing Eddie had to start at the very bottom. You could be a Tekken Lord with one character, but your Eddie had to go all the way back to the starting line. Which is bad for you for how long that'll take you to rank back up, but it's far worse for all the people who are naturally towards the bottom of the rankings, who now suddenly had 1,000 super skilled Eddie Gordos popping up in their backyard looking for a fight. There was one guy I saw who went on a 100 win streak because they had to climb that far up to reach the rank they should be at. Next up, they tried to nerf this one running elbow jab from Azucena that everyone said was too good, except by accident, they ended up buffing it instead. Yeah, the nerf they put in place actually made it better. Now she went flying whenever she did this move, making it pretty much unstoppable, and if you dodged it, you couldn't punish it. But the two even more serious issues were now stages with breakable walls just didn't break, and if you did a certain command when your opponent did their big rage art, you could keep moving when they went into their cinematic. Meaning they would activate rage art, do the cinematic intro to the move, but you could just move during that cinematic intro, meaning you just sidestep their attack and be able to easily start wailing on them the moment they came out of their cinematic. So I will just repeat myself. The next time you want to say a game is broken, ask yourself, is it really broken? Or would you just like to see some adjustments? There is a big difference between those two, and this month Tekken fans learned that the hard way. May is here, and this was the month of indie games. 4 new indie fighting games came out this month, and I'll go from worst to best. And sadly, I hate to talk too negatively about this one because, listen guys, making a video game is hard. Especially if you're an indie developer. I'll gladly point out problems in a game with a massive budget and a huge studio. In fact, you're going to see that pretty soon. But I hate doing that about a small game that is clearly someone's passion project. I root for these smaller fighting game developers, I want them to succeed, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. The first game I'm talking about is Kansui Fighters. This is a game that is about a man who goes into a coma and you are fighting as different parts of his psyche inside his head. Okay, give you props here at the top. That is definitely a unique idea. No one else has ever made a fighting game around that concept. And hey, I'll give them credit. They made a story mode for this game with tons of unique artwork. The roster is pretty good. Each character is voiced. They got a tutorial in here. None of those are things that are easy to do, and I have played lots of fighting games that had way bigger budgets than this that didn't bother with any of that. But I can't lie, this combat is bad. It feels so stiff, very little feels like it combos together, the special moves are all done with simplified inputs, which is fine, but a lot of them don't feel like they naturally connect to your normal moves, and this is the big breaking point for me. If you press down, you start charging your super meter, meaning there are no low attacks. I have seen a few games out there that didn't have low attacks, and I never understand it. I don't know who likes this idea. And also, again, I hate to bring this up, they drew all the sprites out and that is a ton of work, but each character needs like triple the number of sprites. However, I will say the game is still in early access. I do need to make that clear. They are telling you at the front, this game is not done yet. So you know what? I'm rooting for these developers. I hope they can turn it all around. I got my fingers crossed that they can polish it over time. Next up, slightly better, but still not great. Die by the Blade. This game advertised itself as being a modern-day Bushido blade, and yeah, it pretty much is. You pick your weapon, and then whoever lands a hit on the opponent first wins. It does create some solid tension, but I don't know. Maybe it's just the game's AI, but I didn't find much of a challenge in here, and it was just kind of boring. Plus, the game glitched several times on me. Nothing game-breaking, just sounds desyncing or backgrounds disappearing. So yeah, honestly, this was just bland to me. Although I do believe that it's still possible for a modern-day Bushido blade to be done right. In fact, I know it is because this month Sklash did just that. Yeah, in the wildest timing ever, 2 sword-based instant kill fighting games released in the same month. Well, in all fairness, Sklash had already been out, but released on consoles this month. And when I said I was doing this video, people brought up Sklash to me, and they brought it up like I should already know what it was. Like, hey, Sklash finally came to consoles. And I'm like, what's Sklash? Should I know Sklash? Turns out I should indeed know Sklash because this game is legit. Yeah, on paper, it's super easy. Just like Die by the Blade, you pick your fighter and whoever lands a hit first wins. But the parry and kick mechanics are way better. The stamina bar is really well balanced. The dash mechanic adds so much to the game, and there's something about making this a 2D game that makes it so much more tense. Like in Die by the Blade, I've got so much more room to maneuver, I can dodge roll around the opponent, but when I don't have those options, and only a limited amount of room behind me, this just becomes pure footsies. I've had games where I went back and forth with the opponent for so long, just looking for possible openings, and it was tense the entire time. If you're looking for a one-hit KO swordplay style game, Sklash is a perfect example of how to do that right. However, that's not the best new indie fighter of the month. No, for that game, I gotta give it to Arcus Chroma. I've seen other content creators play demos of this before, but this month it officially launched. In early access. Yeah, it's still not complete. There's almost no features in this game, just a simple versus mode, and that's pretty much it. But this was my first chance to actually play this game, and holy cow, this game feels amazing. The big gimmick of it is that you can't jump, which makes it very strange that I can say that about 3 of the 4 games that I've already covered this month. But since you can't jump, if you want to get around your opponent, you have to use this dodge move and slide around them. And I say this as somebody who jumps way too much in fighting games. Yeah, the dodge works just fine. And I'll just go ahead and say, I know the no jumping rule is here just to try and give this game some identity, just to make it feel different, so that people can point at it and go, oh yeah, that's that game where you can't jump. But after playing it, I quickly realized it doesn't need any help trying to establish an identity because the combat in here feels awesome. Everything is so smooth and quick and attacks link together so well. I found myself really wanting to go into training mode just to see what attacks I could combine together into a combo. But even just hopping directly into the versus mode and casually hitting some buttons, it felt so good to figure stuff out on the fly. There's this Fox girl in the game. I just pressed buttons and combos came out with her. She is insanely fun. And I can say that about so many other characters too. This roster is great and the designs are all really charming and unique. Although I have no idea why this developer likes green so much. Like, nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying it's very obvious that you have a favorite color. There's a lot of green in here. Even the Incredible Hulk would be like, that's pretty green. So yeah, Arcus Chroma, again, it's in early development, so there isn't a whole lot of content in here besides the one-on-one matches. But damn, those matches feel amazing. I hope these developers get all the success they deserve and this thing becomes a huge hit. So yeah, a lot of indie games released this month. And yet there was somehow even more DLC. First, Idol Showdown celebrated its 1-year anniversary by upgrading to Idol Showdown Next Fest. This update included quite a lot of new content, but the big one to talk about were the new bosses, Artrus, Durochrony, and Fubuzilla and Kurokami, as well as the brand new playable character, Ninomai. Full disclosure, I know nothing about the world of VTubers or HoloLive, so I guarantee you I mispronounced all those names. But even if I know nothing about these people, I did play this game last year and I thought it was a lot of fun, and it's cool to see it gain updates. Especially considering, in case you haven't heard, the game is free. So if you haven't checked it out, why not? There's nothing to lose. Then King Ghidorah and Hedorah were added to Gigabash. Again, I say this all the time, Gigabash is great. If you want a fun kaiju party style fighting game, Get on this, it is super underrated. Then Beatrix was added to Granblue Fantasy Versus. I didn't play her either, but I definitely played against her. When Vayne came out, I ran into like 2 or 3 of him. When Beatrix came out, she was everywhere. I know nothing about Granblue, but I'm going to assume she's popular based on how often I came across her online. Then Naruto Cross Boruto added Kurenai Yuhi. Wait a minute. I actually know her. Hey, they actually added a character I know. Alright. I still didn't play the game. Then Slayer was added to Guilty Gear Strive. Again, I have said it many times before, this really feels like the Because You Demanded It season. People have been talking about Slayer joining this roster since the game was first announced. Although him being here does make me once again ask, can we do something about the damage in this game? I haven't had the problems that a lot of other people have had with Strive. I've really been enjoying this game, but I will gladly agree with them when I say the damage is too high. And I bring that up with Slayer because Slayer can decimate your life from the moment the round starts. But still, really glad he's here. He's an awesome character. I love they gave him a super where he sucks your blood and then it makes him younger. That is such a cool thing to do with a vampire in a fighting game. But the big DLC this month was Akuma for Street Fighter 6. Akuma is back, he's got some gray in his temples, and he is more pissed off than ever. What really needs to be said about Akuma? He's one of the most popular Street Fighter characters ever. Of course people were excited for him. He was a big hit, and they gave him the sickest Raging Demon ever. Like, seriously, where are they going to take the Raging Demon after this? In Street Fighter 7, when you do a Raging Demon, is someone just going to come to your house and punch you in the face? Are they just going to delete your game every time you get hit with a Raging Demon and then you have to buy it all over again? But this update didn't just give us Akuma, it also included a brand new mode in Street Fighter 6, Giant Attack, which isn't just a very nice reference to Street Fighter's past, it's also one hell of a challenge. Giant Attack is a fight against a super charged up version of a character, and for this first one, they of course made that character Akuma. Now, to clarify, this isn't Shin Akuma, the super buffed up version of Akuma from previous games. This is CERN Akuma. For anyone who hasn't been playing World Tour mode, CERN is a scientific organization within the Street Fighter universe that is studying fighters and trying to take their fighting styles and put them into pale robots. I assure you this has nothing to do with Seth or Sin, you're talking crazy right now, there's an R in that name, it's a totally different thing, stop asking questions. So essentially, this is like a robot or a hologram AI version of Akuma built by CERN, and taking him on was insanely fun. I'm actually mad that this was just a temporary thing. I'm sure they'll bring him back at some point in the future, but I think it is such an awesome idea to give players a big impossible challenge in a game, and they can just take it on whenever they want. Speaking of impossible challenges, let's talk about getting a game made by Microsoft. Not my best segue, but I'll take it. Okay. Some of you might not know where I'm going with this, because this story, shockingly enough, did not get covered by hardly anyone. But when I saw it, I immediately said, oh crap, that's bad. So in May this year, Microsoft announced it was shutting down multiple studios, including the beloved Tango Studios, makers of Evil Within and Hi-Fi Rush. Microsoft said they had to do this to offset the cost of buying all those other bigger studios. You know, the bigger studios they bought up because they were making so much money they said they would pay for themselves. Yeah, listen, I'm not going to go into details about this because we all know it's crappy. We all know Microsoft is being super greedy and scummy about all this, and everyone called them out for this, including Adam Boyes, who took to Twitter and simply posted one image. In response to all of those closures, he posted a screenshot of a quick Google search for Microsoft's profits in 2024, showing that Microsoft had indeed been making money this year. Their profits were up by billions of dollars. Basically, he was calling them out, saying that even with all the big studios they bought, they still made money. Massive money. They didn't need to close these studios. Now, this is a video about fighting games in 2024, so you might be wondering why I'm bringing this up. Because Adam Boyes is the co-CEO of Iron Galaxy, the studio who has spent the last several years trying to get Microsoft to make a new Killer Instinct. In fact, in 2023, they even managed to convince Microsoft to let them make an update to Killer Instinct for the 10th anniversary of it. And people were so excited because, gasp, an update? And by Iron Galaxy no less? the studio who ran the final season of that game? Could this mean that a brand new game is possible now? Or maybe just some kind of new update and new season to the old game? Well, that sure is what we were all hoping, wasn't it? But when I saw Boyes tweet this, it became real clear, nah, it's over. Killer Instinct ain't coming back. And I'm not saying, oh, Boyes shouldn't have called out Microsoft on that, that's what killed it. No way will they work with Iron Galaxy now. No, that's not what happened. I'm not saying Boyes destroyed any chance of a new Killer Instinct with this tweet. What I'm saying is, Microsoft destroyed any chance of a new Killer Instinct, leading Boyes to make this tweet. This is the kind of move someone makes after they have spent years and years trying to get a giant corporation to listen and being repeatedly told no because some chart says it wouldn't make them all the money in the world. So yeah, he should have called them out on this. Much respect to Boyes for doing that. And to all the Killer Instinct fans out there, I say this as a Darkstalkers fan, I know what you're going through. I've been there. I've seen a popular franchise not get a new installment because the giant corporation didn't think enough people bought a 10-year-old game. And it sucks. Also, side note, May was the month when I canceled my Game Pass subscription. Was hardly using it anyways. However, in happier news about an old game coming back to life, May was the month when Maximilian Dood announced he was going to try and bring back Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. That's right, he decided to put on the Infinity Gauntlet and said, I'll do it myself. Okay, that's not true at all. We're just talking about Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and the reference was too good to not make. No, Max would not be doing this by himself. He would be teaming up with multiple editors and modders to bring this project to life, making this one of the biggest fighting game fan projects ever. Yes, they were going to do that thing that so many of us have fantasized about doing. We have all had that dream of, oh, if I could bring back this game that I love. And so many people have said that about Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite because I remember about a year after that game came out, I started seeing people modding a more cel-shaded look into the game, and everyone said, this actually looks good. Why doesn't Capcom just hire this person? Well, Max hired that person. We'll hear more about this later in the year, but for now, I say this with future hindsight powers. Nobody knew how big of an update this was going to be. And that brings us to the final story of May, Multiverse's return. I'm going to start this by reiterating this disclaimer. The team working on this game, Player First Games, is totally at the mercy of their owners, Warner Brothers Studios. And we all know how bad Warner Brothers Studio is. Last year I called them a clown car being driven by pure greed, and in the years since then, they've somehow gotten worse. And Player First Games, this fairly small studio, was given a project that was meant to be a massive crossover between all their properties, while being capable of hosting huge online player bases and creating a live service that would rake in nearly infinite amounts of money. And yet, if you look at these developers' resume, there's pretty much nothing there that implies they knew how to do any of this. Yeah, Warner Brothers bought up this little tiny studio and said, now make Smash Bros. My point is, I am sure the team working on this game was thrown into a nearly impossible situation, and I am positive that they are doing the best job they possibly can in a very unforgiving environment. Now, with that being said, this game is a nightmare. Okay, let's actually talk about the positives in here, because there are some. This is a crossover game, and in a crossover game, you want the developers to actually be fans of the properties, and you want them to be able to convey that love into the game. And you know something? That's a big old check mark. Mission accomplished. All the references, all the animations, all the voice lines and interactions between the characters, they nailed it. In fact, this might even be the best example of that of any Smash clone. Even just their walk cycles are perfect. You look at Taz's walk cycle, and it's straight out of the old Looney Tunes cartoons. Good job, no notes. And when it comes to the gameplay, you know what? Yeah, I actually had some fun with this game for a bit. When the game came out, they told everyone who had played the beta, congrats, you get the Battle Pass for free. So I decided, alright, I'll go through this a bit and get some free stuff, and yeah, I did have some fun. But even when I was having fun, I knew it wasn't good. It's like when you eat a big greasy burger and you know it isn't good for you, and you know it's not even the tastiest burger that you could eat. But hey, it's kind of hard to screw up a burger too much. And yeah, the gameplay, it's not good, but I did keep eating it for a couple weeks. Alright, let's actually dive into this, and I'm gonna go ahead and start by saying, there's a YouTuber out there called Whydo who covers platform fighters, and they did a video on MultiVersus called LeBron James Smash Bros. Is a very fun, very evil disaster. Go watch that video. I'm going to link it in the description down below because it is a great analysis of this game, and as I was watching it, it was shocking how many of my problems he covered, but because he came from a platform fighter background, he had a way better analysis of it than I could possibly provide. I had to give them a shout out because, as I said, that video is good, and I'm trying really hard right now not to parrot everything that they said, but here goes. This game came back after a very controversial absence, which in itself came after a very controversial launch that wasn't a launch, but also kind of was, except for when it wasn't. And it came back with less features and plenty of adjustments that people didn't want. For starters, several of the features that people liked in the beta were now just gone. Tons of training mode options that people enjoyed were now gone. You couldn't change your input buffer anymore, and instead they locked it to the slowest possible setting. Speaking of slow, everyone called the gameplay out for looking way slower now, to which Player First Games said they slowed it down because that's what people wanted, at which point everyone asked, who the hell said that? And I think I know where this problem comes from. This game is meant to be played as a team game, 2v2, and Player First Games said that people were complaining that it was too chaotic. And I can tell you this, when you're playing 2v2, yeah, it can get pretty chaotic, and slowing things down did help with that. But now as a result, when you're not playing 2v2, when it's just 1v1, now the game looks like it's in slow motion. Further changes include, you could no longer play as characters you didn't own in training mode, so you can't test them out to see if you like them before you buy them. In fact, for that matter, you couldn't play in offline mode at all anymore. Meaning if you wanted to run a tournament, you would have to be online and you would have to purchase every single character. I will get back to what purchasing these characters mean in a moment. Now thankfully, several of the problems at launch were changed back after fans complained, including being able to try out characters in training mode. So, credit where credit is due, they did realize they screwed up, although it did raise the question, why did you change any of this in the first place? And there were other problems that they just couldn't touch. I mentioned the problem with the gameplay, let's actually talk about that. When this game launched, it didn't have a block button, just a dodge button. And hey, there are other platform fighters that don't have blocks, but those games tend to be way faster. In those games, the whole point is to zip all over the stage. MultiVersus, as I said, purposely slowed down the game. So now you have a slower game where you can't block. Also, if you dash too much, you burn yourself out and now you can't dodge anymore. Also, most platform fighters let you temporarily cling to the ledge, or you can do a single wall jump. It keeps the game more active. It keeps it so that you're constantly moving. MultiVersus will let you buy a small one-bedroom apartment on the ledge of the stage, and you can just chill there for as long as you want, whenever you want. And it can cause the game to feel like it sometimes just comes to a stop. Or you'll have some characters who just have a big advantage because they have a great move they can do on the ledge of the stage, and now they don't have to leave the ledge of the stage. Speaking of that, I mentioned that so often people complain about balancing in fighting games, saying something is too good when it's not. MultiVersus has stuff that is just too good. There's some moves that aren't just good, they're unanswerable. It's shocking how unbalanced this is. Heck, there were multiple times throughout the year when they had to take characters out of the game because they were just too strong. Anybody else remember the Iron Giant's 2-hit infinite combo? But honestly, none of what I just said is the worst thing about this game. No, this is a Warner Brothers game. You all know what the worst thing about it is. You've seen what they've done to Mortal Kombat. You've heard the stories about Suicide Squad. And this is a free-to-play game. You knew the microtransactions were going to be bad. Of course you did. We all knew that. But even going in with low expectations, this is stunningly awful. When I talk about the battle passes and microtransactions in Street Fighter or Tekken, and I say, yeah, people are mad, but I've seen worse. This is what I'm talking about. This is worse. I remember when this game's It's Not a Beta, but let's call it a beta, got taken down. I heard people trying to defend it saying, well, it's a beta. Of course it was going to get taken down. And then people fired back with, well then why did they put microtransactions and season passes and battle passes and so many other purchases in there? And I kid you not, this is real. I saw multiple people have this exact response. Well, they put all that in there because it's a beta. It's supposed to test out the game, so they had to test and see how much people would be willing to pay. Ah, I see. It was all just a test. It wasn't real. It was just pretend. Then can I have my money back now? If they charged people during the beta because they need to figure out how much people would be willing to pay for microtransactions, then boy were they not paying attention because they didn't learn a damn thing from that beta. Okay, here goes. You have to buy each of the characters individually, and there's no package or group deal. Meaning, if you want every character, it will cost you over $200. And that's how much it was at launch. Who knows how much it is now? And in case you're thinking, well, I'll just buy the characters I like. First off, if you're running a tournament, you will have to buy all these characters, and that price is pretty high for a TO salary. But everything in this game is designed to look perfectly acceptable. But under the surface, they are constantly trying to manipulate you into spending money. And they're not even good at hiding it. There are daily and weekly achievements to get points for the Battle Pass. Sounds fine, most live services do that. But many of these achievements are things like win a match with a Looney Tunes character, win a match with a villain, do 20 special moves with a character wearing a mask. Meaning, if you want to get those rewards, you have to buy the characters for them. Or sometimes, even a specific skin for that character. And it's not just the Battle Pass rewards. You might be thinking, oh, I don't care about any of that. I can ignore all that live service stuff. Let me just play the single player content. And hey, I will admit, they did add a brand new single player mode, and it's pretty big. It's not very good, but it is pretty big. I have to give them that. So the game gives you all these single player modes called rifts that you can go through. Except that there are some rifts, or splitting pathways in the rifts, that can only be played if you again have specific characters and specific costumes. The single player content requires you to own specific costumes. I haven't seen something like this since that Avengers game where halfway through it they stopped and made you use up the money you had been saving to buy a costume to progress the story. And if I am comparing your game to the Marvel Avengers game, you screwed up something with your live service. Speaking of those single player modes, the very first character that they added to the game was Agent Smith from The Matrix, and you could unlock him by buying him, makes sense. Or they told you that you could unlock him for free by playing through the rifts. Oh, that's nice. But to unlock him that way, you had to beat roughly 20 different versions of the rifts. But at this time, there were only 5 different rifts, meaning you had to beat each of them roughly 4 different times on different difficulties. Sounds fair? You want a free character, you gotta play on the higher difficulties and you gotta beat it a couple times. That makes sense. But when you beat one of these rifts, you get gems. And the gems eventually level up when you get enough of them. Here's where it becomes evil. You have to get 3 different gems to each rank up to a specific level in order to unlock a brand new difficulty. Now, first off, you get these gems at random, so trying to get 3 of them to all get to a certain level is really just a big crapshoot. You're relying completely on luck for this. But then, even if you do get the gems to rank up, once you get the gems to a certain level, it becomes an ungodly grind to get them any higher. And each rift has their own colored gems. So you don't have to do this with 3 separate gems once, you have to do this with 3 separate gems multiple times. If you want to unlock Agent Smith this way, you have to play through these long rifts over and over and over again, to the point where you will find yourself thinking, I am fed up with this. Is there any way to get these gems faster? Like, I don't know, could I just buy them in the store? Of course you can buy them in the store. You all knew you could buy them in the store. I didn't even need to finish that sentence. It's so obvious what they're trying to do. And the gems in the store cost more than the character you're trying to unlock. And that's again for just one specific color of gems. And then there's the Battle Pass. Now, let me just say, after everyone complained about this, they did add a way to earn Battle Pass experience points by playing matches. Hey, that's good. But before that, you could only earn them through the missions. You know, those missions I said you need specific characters and costumes for? And someone on Reddit did the math after the first week of the game and said, if this is how much experience points they're giving us, I don't think it's going to be possible to complete the Battle Pass in time without buying additional characters and costumes. Again, they did update it, so now you can beat it in time just by playing through matches, but it raises the question, why wasn't that how it was when the game began? Why was it when this game returned, you suddenly had a system in place where in order to complete the thing that you already spent money on, you had to spend even more money? And then there's this one special currency that can buy you special customization items. How do you unlock this currency? By unlocking other customization items. So you might be thinking, oh, so I get this currency just by playing the game. I'll unlock stuff as I go along, and that gives me the currency to unlock other stuff. It's rewarding me for playing the game. Except that I am telling you right now, you will never get enough of this currency just by playing the game. So if you see a costume that you like, that you can only buy with that special currency, you'll have to find another way to unlock that currency. And how did I say you unlocked it? By unlocking other customization items. What's another way to unlock customization items? By buying them. You want this one specific costume for this character? Great, buy 5 other costumes for other characters that you don't care about. I could keep going, but the point I'm trying to make is, they don't just come in here and say, hey, it costs this much, pay up if you want. No. Everything in this game is designed to make you think, oh, they're being so nice, look at all this stuff they're giving me. When in reality, the only thing they're giving you is a bill. I know people are going to say, well, it's a live service game, it's going to be sleazy, what did you expect? But I've seen a lot of sleazy live service games before, and this one takes the cake. But despite my issues, I have to make this clear. I don't want this game to fail. I'm not rooting for that. As I said, people put work into this thing. As a fan of crossovers, this is a truly unique once-in-a-lifetime crossover game. I have an associate who loves this game, and they've been cheering it on and hoping that it succeeds. It's the final performance of Kevin Conroy, for God's sakes. No, I don't want this thing to fail. I want it to succeed and stick around. But if you keep running it like this, that ain't going to happen, and all of this will be gone. And that is criminal. Well, okay, actually, in retrospect, I probably shouldn't use that word because turns out there's also a bug in the game that will just occasionally take your hard-earned currency and then buy a random costume without you asking for that. And last I heard, Warner Brothers wasn't issuing refunds for that, so, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's actually criminal. That's like, call the authorities kind of criminal, so, yeah, if this game goes away forever and all this hard work is lost to the sands of time, maybe it's not criminal, but it'll be a real shame. Holy crap, it's finally June. Okay, June is here and I got a surprise for you. It's more DLC. Homelander came to Mortal Kombat 1, then Nin Master was added to DNF Duel, bringing the first season to an end, and sadly, yeah, this was their only season. Said before, I'll say it again, DNF is a very fun game. It just didn't get the support it needed. The people funding the game still thought fighting games worked like they did back in the 90s, where you just put the game out and that's all you needed to do. And sadly, waiting over a year to give the game any kind of update kinda killed it. But hey, the game still exists. It didn't get delisted. The servers are still up. Just because it has a small player base doesn't mean it can't be enjoyed. I don't think there's any such thing as a dead game, as long as it can still be played. As long as you can get some friends together to check it out, find a server for people who want to play, then the game still lives on. But Nin Master, Homelander, that's baby stuff. The real MVP DLC of the month was Lisa joining Monstroscopy. Again, I'm just stunned that this little indie game based on old Technicolor monster movies isn't just getting support, it's getting lots of support, spaced out pretty evenly throughout the year. And did I mention it's all free? And as for Lisa, okay, I know I said this game was meant to be a tribute to old Mexican horror films, but Lisa is just straight up the nurses from Silent Hill. She can even summon out a giant pink theme park mascot like in Silent Hill 3. So yeah, admittedly, doesn't really fit the theme, but I don't care, I still think it's cool. Then it was confirmed this month that KOF 15 would be getting more content. Pretty wild news, I think most people were sure this game was done. Then it was announced Guilty Gear would be getting an anime, which feels like something that should have happened a long time ago. Daisuke cares a whole hell of a lot about the story of Guilty Gear, of course this guy wants an anime based on it. Although it turns out it's going to be a totally original story, which makes me wonder how confusing it's going to be to people jumping into it with no knowledge of the game. Hell, I think even the people who do have knowledge of the games would probably like a show based off of them so that way they can finally understand what the hell is going on. Instead, it's going to feature a brand new character chasing down Soul, and the moment she appeared, everyone said, yeah, she's going to be playable in the next season of DLC. However, that wasn't the biggest announcement this month. And neither was this. We'll get to the actual biggest announcement in a moment, but this was really close. Street Fighter VI announced its brand new season of DLC, and it was going to include Bison, back from the dead. Kind of. We'll talk about it in a moment. Then Elena, finally giving us some Street Fighter 3 characters. I said this all the way back when the game was first announced and we saw the roster. People were wondering why they weren't going to include any Street Fighter 3 characters since that was the last game in the timeline. I got my theories about this, but I'll save most of that for when we finish up the Street Fighter retrospective next month. But the short answer is, I think there's many reasons why they didn't include any of the Street Fighter 3 characters, but one of the big ones is, I think Capcom was pretty nervous about the time skip, so they decided to steer clear of a lot of the Street Fighter 3 characters, since that cast was mostly made of younger characters, meaning they would be more visibly changed by a time skip, making it harder to reverse that if it didn't work out. I know people love to argue with that and say, well, they include Ed in the game. Yeah, but Ed's a genetic experiment who aged like 10 years within the span of one game, so you can kind of do with him whatever you want. However, if a character like Ibuki or Makoto or Yun or Yang show up and suddenly they're 30 years old, if the time skip doesn't work, yeah, it's kind of hard to reset that. But Street Fighter 6 was a huge success, people loved the time skip, so now I think it's safe to say we're going to start getting a lot more Street Fighter 3 characters in here, and I can't wait to see what they do with them. But the big announcement with this DLC is that for the first time ever, Street Fighter would have guest characters in a game. And they're the perfect guest characters. It's Terry and Mai. First off, I cannot be the only person who, when they saw this trailer, thought, oh my god, Capcom vs. SNK 3 is happening. Secondly, and more importantly, SNK and Capcom have been side by side since the birth of fighting games back in the 90s. Sometimes as rivals, sometimes as friends. And Fatal Fury lines up so much with Street Fighter, it feels like they could exist within the same world. So Terry and Mai being their first guest characters ever is perfect. However, we should bring up the concern that a lot of people had, and understandably so, which is that because fighting games now take so much longer to make, it means we get fewer characters each season, especially if you have to make World Tour content for each of them. So now we only have 4 characters every year, and half of this season was going to be guest characters. So you're only getting 2 returning Street Fighter characters. Yeah, that sucks. Nothing else to say. It's just kind of a crappy situation. But in all honesty, as much as I love the cast of Street Fighter, as much as I want to see more characters return, if you gave me a big red button that I could press to exchange Terry Bogard and Mai Shiranui for any returning Street Fighter character, I can even choose which one I want to return. All I have to do is hit this button. I would throw that button in the river so that way no one could ever find it. I'm sorry, Mai and Terry being in Street Fighter is way too important. This is a monumental occasion. So yeah, I understand people's problems with this, and to some extent, I even share their concerns. But sometimes you can be upset about one thing and even happier about another thing. Sort of like how I was upset about Bison returning, but I'm also kind of happy about it at the same time. Yeah, the first character of this season also dropped this same month. M. Bison returned, and folks, I was not excited about this character at all. Not for any mechanical reason, not because I didn't want to play against him, but I think a lot of Street Fighter players are ready to move on from Shadaloo. Bison, or a Bison robot body, has been the main antagonist for 4 out of the 6 main Street Fighter entries. So when he died in the last game, it was like, alright, time to finally move on. And now Bison is back. But A, he plays great in the game. Mechanically, people love him. And B, just going from a pure story angle, it becomes pretty clear this is probably a Bison backup clone body, and he didn't get all of Bison's memories, just fragments of it. And I actually find this to be interesting. It's going to depend on where they decide to take him. They could just do the boring thing and have him be Bison all over again. But when you play through the World Tour stuff, this new Bison is way more unhinged. He acts like he doesn't care about Shadaloo, and his followers are just a bunch of random remaining Shadaloo grunts in a busted down lab. He doesn't have the resources he used to. He doesn't have the followers he used to. And he doesn't seem to care about that. Heck, even his psycho power isn't responding like it used to. It's far more explosive and he can't contain it. So they could take him in a very different direction. I mean, he's still obviously going to be a villain, but more of a crazed monster than a cold, calculating dictator. In other words, he could end up being like a completely new character. I don't know, it's still way too early to tell. We don't know what they have planned for him. I just hope they don't end up making him Bison all over again. I hope they actually do something different with him. But now that that's out of the way, time to talk about the actual biggest announcement of the month and one of the biggest announcements of the year. On the unassuming morning of June 18th, the world tuned in to a standard run-of-the-mill Nintendo Direct when suddenly, out of nowhere, a sound erupted that could be heard across the globe.
Flash in X-Men vs. Street Fighter.
What's up?
Duke it out in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, New Age of Heroes. 4.
Marvel vs. Capcom is finally free. We spent all this time asking when's Marvel, and we finally have our answer. After years of people demanding it, after a hashtag dominating the world with artists and players and streamers and just random everyday people supporting it and shouting free Marvel from the rooftops, Marvel vs. Capcom is finally free. But it wasn't just Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It was all of them. Marvel vs. Capcom 1, Children of the Atom, X-Men vs. Street Fighter. It was everything we could have wanted. And it was getting a physical release, so even if it got delisted again, we'd still have a way to play it. And that physical version was going to come with a brand new mini-comic made just for the game. I repeat, there was going to be brand new Marvel vs. Capcom officially licensed story content created in 2024. This is insane. If these two companies were willing to talk, if they were willing to work together on something like this, it means a brand new Marvel game isn't out of the question anymore. For the longest time, it seemed impossible, but now there's actually hope. And I already made a video talking about everything that this could possibly mean. But one other point that I have to repeat is that this wasn't just the Marvel vs. Capcom collection. This was the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, with the exact same logo as the last Capcom Fighting Collection. And on Capcom's website, they were now listing the Fighting Collection as a series, implying there were more coming. That means that A, there are people within Capcom who are actually championing their fighting games again, and B, it means that that first Capcom Fighting Collection actually sold. It might not have blown up, but it sold well enough that when Capcom went to Marvel and pitched this collection, they had to show them the sales figures of the last Fighting Collection, and it was apparently good enough for Marvel to go, yeah, sure, why not? At least, that's what I think happened. As I said, I did a video on this, and a lot of people said, no. This being called the Fighting Collection and the Fighting Game Collection being listed as a series on their website doesn't mean the first one sold. It didn't sell well. We all know it didn't. Okay. if that's what you want to think. But I want you to remember you said that for later in this video. For now though, let's continue into July, which might be the winner of most DLC in a single month. Takeda was added to Mortal Kombat 1. It's cool to see that even in this new timeline, characters from the previous timeline can still show up. This brought Season 1 to a close, and then we got the announcement of Season 2, and man, it feels like Warner Brothers came to Ed Boon with Season 1 and said, your guest characters this time have to all be dark, edgy superheroes on streaming services. That's what's popular right now, so do that. And now with Season 2, it feels like Ed just gets to put in there whoever he wants, and it's all the classics. It's horror movie characters, 80s action characters, and Schwarzenegger. Ed has a type, and he's sticking with that till he dies. Let's just let him be. He's earned it. He's not bothering anybody. Speaking of the 80s, Rocksteady was added to Nick All-Star Brawl. Kind of an odd choice. I mean, I like Bebop and Rocksteady, but from all of Nick's history, just Rocksteady feels really, really specific. Like, even if this was a fighting game based solely around 80s action cartoons, I'd still be like, huh, that's a really specific choice. Then, from the world of indie fighting games, Rick Johnson got added to Pocket Bravery. Very happy to see Pocket Bravery gain some DLC. That game is a massive passion project, so I'm happy to see it gain continuous support. And here's some DLC I didn't expect to say when I started this video. Clamilton came to Merfight. He's a giant clam. I don't think I need to say anything else. Sums him up right there. Then Kawaki joined Naruto Cross Boruto in his Karma Progression form. Lydia came to Tekken. Very happy to see her returning. I feel like she was one of the big breakout characters of Tekken 7, despite being added at the very end of that game's life and having absolutely no story content in the game. Well, now she's back, and considering in Tekken 8, Kazuya said he's going to start a world war where only the strongest countries would remain, and Lydia is the Prime Minister of Poland, yeah, it really feels like she should be in the game. Then a brand new character named Uzuki came to Under Night in Birth. I'll be totally honest with you, I have an aesthetic that I love, and that aesthetic is Halloween. And Uzuki has a giant gothic fog hat and flaming bat skeletons. Well, that's all I needed to hear. I will learn how to play her now, it's settled. And lastly, we turn to multiverses. Agent Smith was added to the game. I never touched him, but I have heard he's considered pretty bad. Then they added Samurai Jack, and I did actually play as him some. He's alright. He does some cool stuff. And speaking of multiverses, there's a story that dropped this month that kind of relates to it, but not really in the most flattering way. According to a report made by former Washington Post Launchers editor Mikhail Klementov, Riot Games, the makers of League of Legends and the upcoming 2XKO, have been working on a crossover platform fighter called Pool Party, but unfortunately that game had been cancelled. And the reason he quotes as why it was cancelled is because Pool Party's cancellation was precipitated in part by a reassessment of consumer appetite for a Smash competitor. According to sources familiar with the project's development, executives at Riot were spooked by what they perceived as the failure of multiverses. Holy cow. I remember when Multiverses came out and there were all these news stories about how many people were playing it, people kept saying this is going to send ripples throughout the entire video game landscape. And it sure did send ripples, but not the kind we were expecting. Imagine your game doing so poorly it caused other games to get canceled. That's like McDonald's putting out a burger that's so bad, Wendy's has to start shutting down stores. Well, okay. Listen, I'm poking fun here because it's kind of an easy setup, but real talk, I read through this article. I don't think that's entirely why this thing got canceled. This article mentions that Pool Party has had problems with its development for a long time now, and also Riot Games is currently working on another free-to-play fighting game that's a crossover between all of its franchises. In all honesty, I think Pool Party was already on the chopping block, and Multiverses was just the straw that broke the camel's back. It's not 100% the reason why the game got canceled. Then, as for new developments, Guilty Gear announced a Season 4, and the characters will include a couple more favorites returning, that character from the upcoming anime, who we all knew would be joining, and Lucy from Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Wow, okay, I can honestly say I didn't see this one coming. So, this was announced at EVO, and I was actually in Vegas for EVO this year. It was my very first time going, and it was amazing. I loved it. I met so many incredible people there. Thank you all for the positive words. It was great getting to meet so many fans and other creators. It was a wonderful experience. But this got leaked a few hours before the show, so I was out having breakfast when this happened, and I was checking my phone in the restaurant, and everyone was talking about Lucy. They were shocked by Lucy, but nobody was saying Cyberpunk and nobody was saying Guilty Gear. So I had no idea what anyone was talking about. I just knew that, look Smithers, Lucy is coming. So imagine my surprise when the trailer went up and I realized, oh, that Lucy. This is such a wild inclusion. Partly because I didn't think Guilty Gear would ever get guest characters, let alone from an anime. But also, I have to wonder what the Cyberpunk guys said when Daisuke went up to them and showed them the concept art for Lucy's reaction to getting hit by Faust Super while she had a giant afro on. You know there had to be some explaining that went down that day. But also, Guilty Gear finally showed off their brand new 3v3 mode, and I kept thinking, okay, it's either going to be like KOF style, where it's one character at a time, or it's going to be like the Versus Fighter style, where you can swap in and out. Imagine my surprise when I see it was something completely unique. I don't even know how to describe this, it's madness. It's pure insanity. You've got 6 characters going at it, sometimes all at once, with assist summons doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and then there's special effects and buffs that you can activate. I can't even follow what's going on here, but you know what? It looks like fun. By the way, I know I said I wasn't going to cover any tournaments, but this year at EVO, Punk won Street Fighter 6. That was huge. An American hasn't won Street Fighter at EVO in over a decade, and Punk has gotten so close so many times. This was truly one of the most memorable moments of the year for the entire FGC. Now as for new games, Outrage Fight Fest released. This game is a giant free-for-all, 16 characters in a ring going at till only one is left. But uses fighting mechanics in its combat, so there's just enough of an overlap that I count it for this video. However, I checked this out because it definitely had big Rumbleverse vibes, and I loved Rumbleverse. This is no Rumbleverse. It's a goofy TV show where you're in this big arena and you just start wailing on anyone and everyone, and yeah, that's kind of where the comparisons end. The combat is way too simple. Like I said, it's got some fighting game mechanics, but they're all really basic, you know, punch, kick, block, throw, charge attack. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I do like the gimmick of the game though, that the more you fight, the angrier you get, and as a result, you kind of hulk out and get huge, but you just get huge. If you want to get silly with this thing, go all out. Have everyone turn to a giant monster, you know, have them go full Hulk and they just start to look like a big caveman version of themselves, rather than just being themselves, but bigger. And the game does want to have this goofy, lighthearted tone, but there's not really a whole lot that takes advantage of that. Like, there's a guy in a dinosaur costume and one guy who looks like he's from the 70s. Okay, I guess that's fun. I'm sure you can unlock more as you play, but again, dude, if you want to go wacky, go all out. The game is just too simple and it needs way more personality. Also, I played it recently to get footage for this video, and it was real clear that 16-person lobby was me and 15 bots, and those bots provided no challenge. So, it's not a bad game, but it's not living up to its potential. But the other new game to be released this month was Dojo Masters. I said Squash is just pure footsies, but if you tried that and you said, needs more than just sword guys, then this is the game for you. There's no jumping, once again, just punching and kicking. However, each character has a health bar, but if you get their health bar all the way down, they don't lose the game. You still have to knock them on the ground after their health runs out in order to KO them. And that can lead to some really tense moments and big comebacks as you run out of life, but then you keep fighting to keep yourself from being knocked down. And each character has a pretty decent variety to how they fight, which again, is really impressive considering there are only 2 buttons. There isn't a ton to this game, but it does what it sets out to do, and it does it pretty well. Big thumbs up to the devs. But hey, that's enough new games. Time for some old games. SVC Chaos got a re-release this month. Is SVC Chaos a good game? You know, depends on your definition of good, but I'll admit, I do think it's fun. It's this very bizarre game that could only have existed at that exact time in history when both Capcom and SNK were trying to figure out what to do with their fighting games. And I am all about re-releasing older fighting games so that way everyone has an opportunity to play them. And this is such a unique oddity that it deserves to be preserved. And lastly, a new fighting game was announced this month, Bleach Rebirth of Souls. Now, when I was coming up, Dragon Ball was the series that I was obsessed with, but after that ended, I was looking around for a new show to get into. I liked One Piece, I liked Naruto, but I loved Bleach. That became my new obsession. Up until I kind of fell out of love with it towards the end of the series. But hey, Bleach nostalgia is big right now. Everyone is getting back into it thanks to that new show. So I am down with a brand new Bleach game. Kind of wish it wasn't another anime arena fighter, but hey, I guess that's asking for too much. But I have to admit, it actually looks kind of good. I'm still a little hesitant, but I've got some hope. It's August, and guys, you're never going to believe this. There's more DLC. I know I didn't think it was possible, but somehow they found the way. Iroh was added to Nick All-Stars Brawl. I would never in a million years have guessed that Uncle Iroh was going to be coming to a fighting game, but you know what? I'm down. The definition of a fan favorite character. Beetlejuice was added to Multiverses. I am a big Beetlejuice fan, so I decided to come back and check the game out for him, and mechanically, he's really strong. I remember a lot of people out there saying he was top tier when he came out. But flavor-wise, he's fine. They could have done a little bit more to make him feel like Beetlejuice, but he's not bad. Although the voice actor they got for him is shockingly on point. They nailed it. If they ever make another Beetlejuice animated series, this is the guy to call. Brandon Carter was added to Pocket Bravery. Again, very happy to see that this game is still getting support. Also shocked that it got its second DLC character just 1 month after the last one. They are really putting in some work on this DLC right now. Then Versusia got added to Granblue. This character appeared in the story mode for the game, so it's cool that they finally got added as a playable character. I'll admit I haven't played Granblue since she was added, so I haven't seen really how good she is in the game, but from what I've seen in the trailers, she has crazy range and big energy pillars that hit all over the place. And speaking as the guy who plays the grappler in this game, yes, that's exactly what Granblue was missing. More giant energy blast and ranged attacks. Thanks, guys. You maybe want to give Ladiva some armor on anything, please? I'm dying out here. And the last DLC character this month was Jiro, added to Merfight. And one look at him and you can tell, okay, he does not fit this theme. He's pixelated and he's not a merman. And I kept looking at this guy going, wait, he looks familiar. He looks exactly like the protagonist in this indie fighter I checked out a few years back, Battle High. Yeah, it turns out Merfight was made by the same guy who made Battle High. I had zero idea that was a thing, but it's awesome. I love that they're seeing more success with the second game, and it's cool that they're keeping their older characters around. As for announcements, Guilty Gear Strive announced it would be coming to the Switch. Very curious how that's going to run. At this point, they might as well just wait until the Switch 2 comes out. And King of Fighters celebrated their 30th anniversary with the announcement that they were going to have 30 more announcements. Normally, I hate whenever a company has a big build-up only to reveal that they were building up to announce that they had another announcement. But you know what? Announcing that you have 30 announcements? Okay, I'll let that one go. That's actually kind of exciting. Granted, as the year went on, it turns out most of those announcements were just nothing. I mean, there were things like a poster, a jacket, stickers, a quiz, a special message from Kyo's voice actor. The game is on sale on Steam. The game being on sale on Steam should not be part of your special 30 announcements across the year. That's something that happens like once a month, and you can just announce it on social media. That's it. So yeah, I see what they were trying to do. I give them credit for trying to get people hyped up for 30 announcements across the year for the 30th anniversary, but yeah, you know, you might have set expectations a little bit high with that. Then 2XKO got its first beta where anyone could register to play it. I got a chance to check it out and, okay, the game looks great, it's really creative, and there's a ton of potential here. But this game is set up to be played by 2 people on a single team, and I was trying to control both characters at once because, yeah, I just don't really like the idea of playing on a team in a fighting game. And man, you have to be quick to control both those characters. I didn't even go online because after staying in training mode for a while, I did not feel confident with my timing. When this officially releases, I am looking forward to it, but I am going to need way more time in the lab to get used to it. But the most impressive story this month was a big ol' case of deja vu. Nobody expected one of the most hype announcements of the year to suddenly drop during a Nintendo Direct. So it was really wild when it happened a second time.
What's happening? Capcom versus SNK2, Mark of the Millennium 2001.
Hold up!
Project Justice.
Capcom Fighting Collection 2 was announced this month, which would include almost every fighting game from Capcom that people have been demanding to get a re-release all in one package. Capcom vs. SNK Pro, Capcom vs. SNK 2, Plasma Sword, Power Stone 1, Power Stone 2, and my beloved Project Justice. And also a random short-lived version of Alpha 3 and Capcom Fighting Evolution. But hey, you know what? They don't all have to be exciting. First off, I am a huge Rival Schools fan. I was obsessed with Project Justice when I was a kid. I love the combat, the characters, the crazy team-up supers, the story. And on the day this was announced, I'll admit, I slept in. I was not there for it live. I completely missed this. So when I woke up, the first thing I did was check social media, and I had so many messages from people saying, "Dude, they did it! You got your wish! You must be so happy! It finally happened!" But nobody was saying what actually happened. They were just messaging me to say they were happy, but not what they were happy about. But I realized it had to be something in that Nintendo Direct, so I started watching the replay of that like a hawk. Like, okay, I don't know what everyone is talking about, but clearly something cool is going to happen and I don't want to miss it. And yes, needless to say, I was very happy with this reveal. This has now immediately jumped up to the top of my most anticipated games list, and it's not even a new game. But the other thing that I want to bring up about this, hey, remember how I said that the Marvel vs. Capcom collection being a part of the Fighting Game collection and Capcom listing the Fighting Game collection as a series means that first collection must have sold well? Yeah, I made a whole video talking about that, and I still got a lot of people saying, no, that doesn't mean it sold well. If it sold well, we would have a second Fighting Game collection. Hey, guess what? Yeah, I'll admit, I'm being a little petty on this. I'm taking a victory lap. Getting a Fighting Game Collection 2 means people did indeed buy the first collection. And I saw people online trying to dispute this, saying, no, they're only doing this because SNK let them release CVS. It doesn't mean the first collection sold well. Guys, I'm going to give you a little bit of business advice. If you put out a project that doesn't sell well, and then you're told, hey, you're now allowed to re-release this game that everyone wants, you're not going to, A, do extra work to include a bunch of games that were not part of that deal unless you have a reason to. But even if you decide, you know what, screw it, we got the emulator all set up, it's not too much work, I'm a fan of these games, let's just do it. So even if they are only including this because they're passionate about it, you're not going to then, B, title that collection the exact same name as the thing that didn't sell well. If you put out a collection and that collection does not meet your sales expectations, you're not then going to go back into the boss's office and say, hey, guess what? We're gonna do it again. And you know what? Let's say they are only doing this because SNK let them include the Capcom vs. SNK games. If that was the case, and the first Fighting Game collection did not sell well, they would have just included Capcom vs. SNK, Capcom vs. SNK Pro, and Capcom vs. SNK 2, and called this the Capcom vs. SNK collection, and left it at that. So yes, at this point, I think it's safe to say that the Capcom Fighting Collection was indeed a success. And you know what? I've been wondering how much of a success it is because this thing got announced like 2 months after the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection got announced, meaning they announced 2 different fighting game collections. So either A, the Fighting Game collection sold so well they decided to pursue 2 more of them, or the pre-orders on the Marvel vs. Capcom collection were so high, they looked at that and said, we have to get the next one out as soon as possible. Take advantage of this while it's hot. I don't know which one it is, but people are finally going to get to play these classic old Capcom fighting games. I am so happy about that. I do wonder how many features each game will come with though, because I know these are supposed to be arcade ports, but the Project Justice home release had so much cool content. I'm hoping they find some kind of a way to include it but if they can't, at least we get to play the game itself again. September was kind of a crazy month, but before we get to all the reasons why, let's talk DLC. Powerpuff Girls came to Multiverses. They had actually been hinted at in the launch trailers, so people have been asking about them for a while now. Then Karma Progression Boruto joined Naruto Cross Boruto, and I think that's the final Naruto character of the year, meaning all the Naruto fans out there can be happy that I won't be mispronouncing any more names. Then Faust 5 joins Mistroscopy. She's the wrestling niece of Faust 4, who was already in the game, and she has to travel back in time to stop a zombie apocalypse that's happening in the far-off future of 1985. God, have I mentioned yet that I just love that Mistroscopy exists? I love that somebody out there made a game with La Llorona, a Silent Hill nurse, and a time-traveling luchador from the 80s. Would y'all please go and check this game out if you haven't already? Then the most shocking DLC for me this month was Rojak and Balzar join Gigabash. I say this is shocking because Gigabash has gotten several updates over time, but all the new characters added were existing properties. They were Godzilla or Ultraman, which is great, that's awesome, but Gigabash created a whole bunch of really fun original characters. So I was kind of hoping that we could get some more of that. But then I thought, oh man, maybe the game didn't sell enough to make some more original characters. Maybe they got lucky and landed the Godzilla deal early on, and the sale of those Godzilla characters is all that's keeping them around at this point, but nope. They actually introduced 2 totally original new characters. Well, I say original. These are some Power Rangers Super Sentai coded characters if I have ever seen any. But hey, I ain't complaining, they're fun additions to a very fun game. Would y'all please go and check this game out if you haven't already? Alright, now that those are out of the way, let's get into some of the weirder stories of the month. First up, Dragon Ball FighterZ received another patch, and this one... Okay, I want to say it broke the game, but like, in a good way and on purpose. This was already a game where you could do insane stuff, and the last big balance update before this made it even crazier with stuff like being able to link level 1s to level 3s. But now we got another big balance patch, and the game is just pure chaos now. I saw so many people refer to this as the Kusoge update, and while I don't agree, this game is not Kusoge, it's about as close as any big release from a major developer I've seen in the past 10 years. I mentioned earlier that apparently Bandai Namco did the rollback update themselves, but ArcSys did this update. And I have heard rumors throughout the years that ArcSys hasn't really enjoyed working with Bandai on fighters, and this update almost feels like they said, oh, you didn't let us do the rollback update? How about we just break your entire game? How about that? Okay, it's not that bad. In fact, the update is pretty fun. But it's also the kind of thing that makes me go, you know what, maybe Street Fighter 2 had it right. Maybe we should just sell each update of a game as its own separate release. Because seeing what this game has now become kind of makes me wish I could go back 1 or 2 patches and play the older versions as well, because this really does feel like a brand new game at this point. It is unrecognizable from what it was like 3 years ago. I am actually getting nostalgic for a different version of a game that still exists. Then when it comes to announcements, Ken and Chun-Li were going to be coming as DLC for the first season of Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, which is a weird thing to say considering we still don't know all the characters who are going to be in the base roster, but I guess that's just how fighting games are now. This makes a lot of sense. Terry and Mai are coming to Street Fighter, it's only fair that Ken and Chun-Li go to Fatal Fury. This is a very clear 1-for-1 even trade. However, that wasn't the only announcement for Fatal Fury this month. It was also announced that professional soccer player Cristiano Ronaldo would be doing something with the game. Yeah, this is all we know. Even though the trailer went up 4 months ago, we still have no idea what's going on. Is he just promoting the game? Is he going to be a guest star in the game? Is he going to be playable? This is SNK we're talking about. Don't act like they won't just shove a real-world celebrity into their game. But speaking of Fatal Fury, this was the month that Terry Bogard came to Street Fighter, and folks, I want you all to find somebody out there who will look at you the way the Street Fighter devs look at Terry Bogard. Not only does he play so well, he's one of the most fun characters in the game. He has so many moves that are references to his older games. He's got an attack that was only in Fatal Fury Dominated Minds, probably the most forgotten Fatal Fury game. He's got a sidestep that is a reference to the lane change mechanic of his old games, and his big level 3 super is a reference to the Fatal Fury animated movie. You could not have made a better tribute to this character. Speaking of Street Fighter, they introduced a brand new feature to the lobbies. Lee Fin is now hanging out in the lobbies, and she'll let you fight an AI opponent whose gameplay is based off of other actual players in the real world around your skill level. This is genius because, yeah, playing against people is way better than playing against a computer. They're not just going to read your inputs or set themselves at a specific difficulty or stand there waiting for you to do something that they can react to. No, you actually get a sense of each individual player's personality. They can change throughout a match and force you to think of new strategies. However, sometimes, and especially as a game gets later on into its lifespan, you might not be able to find someone at your skill level out there. So this is a good answer to that. Plus, I've said this many times, a lot of people want to play fighting games, but they get nervous at the idea of playing against another person. A lot of people experience that, and it does keep them from playing these games. Now with this, you get that feeling of playing against someone without having to actually, play against someone. And I can tell you, this has been a huge success. Ever since they introduced this, every single time I've gone to a lobby, I have seen a huge crowd swarmed around Lee Fin. It is a very wild thing to see. Sometimes it feels like there are more people waiting to take on the AI fighters than the other actual players. And I checked it out, I played one match against them, and yeah, it does not feel like going up against the computer. The opponent made mistakes like a human would. It actually moved around looking for openings like a human would. It's wild to see something like this that works so well. I remember Killer Instinct 2013 had something like this too, but in order to play against those opponents, you had to go into a special mode, and there was all this other stuff you had to do in the mode, and these AI opponents were just in that mode somewhere. It's so much better just being able to go up to somebody and say, I would like to fight an opponent now, and then you can just do that. Now, going from a new feature that was met with positivity to a new feature that, yeah. So Mortal Kombat Season 2 began with 3 new characters. Noob Saibot, Cyrax, and Sector, all in their new universe versions, and include brand new animalities for each character. Animalities were one of the goofier inclusions in the older games, but you know what? I love the goofy stuff in the older games, so I am totally on board with this. But the big addition this season was a brand new story mode, Chaos Reigns. This story saw Havoc from an alternate reality where he got his hands on Chronicles Hourglass and created a universe run by Chaos, naturally with a K. Now, mechanically, the 3 new characters were met pretty well. I remember a lot of people saying that they were fun. I even heard people saying Noob Saibot was probably the most fun he's ever been. The actual story mode, though, wow, this was a big nothing sandwich. It was over with so quick. Almost every Let's Play I saw someone doing of it ended with them going, wait, it's over? No, there's definitely more. There's gotta be more coming. This is like part 1, right? And we spent most of the time hanging out with alternate reality versions of characters, which, hey, listen, I'm okay with alternate reality stuff. I know everyone is getting burnt out on the multiverse right now, but I still think that you can do fun stuff with it. But A, we're still learning about this new realities version of these characters. So immediately going into a story where we're now hanging out with new versions of the already new versions of characters really feels like it doesn't matter. And secondly, we spend almost no time with them, but we're still told we're supposed to care. Like, alternate reality Tanya and Rain are supposed to have this really sad moment, and I'm just like, I've known you two for 5 minutes, and all I know of you is 1 line of exposition. Why should I care? Hell, I don't even really know anything about the regular new versions of Rain and Tanya. We spent such little time with them in the main story mode. Why not have them be in the Chaos Reigns story mode so that way I can learn more about them rather than these alternate reality versions who I will never see again? And again, I'm cool with alternate reality versions of characters, but we're walking around with World War II Johnny Cage, and every time he talked, I just thought, oh my god, dude, we get it. Multiverses, different realities, you're from the 40s, we get it. I've said this before, but playing through the story mode of MK1, I was really interested in learning more about Liu Kang's reality. Then it really feels like somebody at Warner Brothers came running in, kicked down the door and said, multiverses are in right now. Everyone is talking about them. Disney is doing it, Spider-Man is doing it, and we're going to put it into The Flash, and that's going to be a huge success, so you have to do it too. And then they just had to change the entire story to shove it in there. And Chaos Reigns really feels like someone said, you have to make sure everyone knows this is about alternate realities. That's what all of this is about now. In fact, that's another depressing thing right there. It does feel like that's what all of this is about now. Mortal Kombat has this big, rich, deep lore with the different realms and the tournaments and the gods and all these clans and different factions fighting against each other. And that stuff is good, but I can understand, over time you might need some kind of a refresher. So hey, we got this brand new reality. You can establish all that stuff again, but show how it's a little bit different now. But instead, between how the last story mode ended and this story mode and all the implications moving forward, it now feels like none of that stuff is what Mortal Kombat is. It now feels like Mortal Kombat is a game about alternate realities fighting each other. And then, as I said, the story mode just kind of ends. It's just over. Like, there's a version of Havik with god-level powers, and Noob Saibot beats him. And that's just what happens. That's it. There's no real build-up to it. It doesn't feel like you're going into the conclusion. It almost feels like there was an entire act that was missing in this thing. Sub-Zero becomes Noob Saibot, and then he just beats Havik. And my description right now had about the same amount of build-up as the actual story had. In fact, you know what? It just dawned on me. Why isn't the new Havik in this story mode? You created this brand new version of Havik for Liu Kang's new reality, and I did not like him. He was just way too boring and unimportant. He was just kind of there. But now you got this new story, and it's all about Havik from an alternate reality where he has the powers of a god. Why isn't the new version of Havik in here as well? Heck, there's even a moment in this story mode where Liu Kang mentions how he altered this reality to make sure that this world's version of Havik would not become like the Havik we know. How is Havik not in this story mode? Havik, to put in a very twisted way, is supposed to be all about freedom. He's against rules and order of any kind. So imagine if he was in this story mode, he met this other version of himself who obtained all this power, and then he learns, wait, somebody's been controlling me this entire time? Someone's been pulling my strings throughout my entire life? How would he react to that? Or heck, for that matter, how would the two Haviks react to each other? Imagine the two of them team up, but then they eventually betray each other because, Havik. They're all about chaos. Of course they wouldn't work well together. This feels like the perfect opportunity to flesh out this brand new reality's version of Havik and explore his character. Or he could just be Sir not appearing in this film. Although maybe that's for the better because, like I said, I didn't really like the new reality version of Havik. And you know something? I kind of feel the same way about the new alternate reality God Havik. I actually really liked Havik in the old 3D Mortal Kombat games because he was, not to repeat this over and over again, but chaotic. He wasn't even evil. He was just on whoever's side. He just wanted to make madness happen. This Havik is just an evil emperor, and he is so boring. I gotta be honest with you, I'm really wondering where this new Mortal Kombat continuity is going because there's some interesting stuff that was established in the main game, but after seeing how it ended, and now seeing it fleshed out more in this DLC story, I'm beginning to wonder what the plan is. Like, hey, okay, positives. I like that Cyrax ends up joining Scorpion's clan. I actually think that's a cool development. But after that, alright, Bi-Han becomes Noob Saibot again. That makes sense. But in the original timeline, Kuai Liang, Bi-Han's brother, took over as Sub-Zero after that. But in this reality, Kuai Liang is Scorpion. So now who's going to be the new Sub-Zero? Is Bi-Han going to go back to being Sub-Zero? And if so, is Noob Saibot now no longer a thing? Again, it's a new reality. I'm not saying they have to just follow the same pattern as the old reality. I am all for them doing something different. But I still want there to be a plan. And after seeing how this story mode went and how the first story mode ended, I'm starting to wonder, so is there a plan? Or are you just throwing things at the wall because WB is forcing you to pump out content faster than you can plan it? I really don't want to come off too negative. And I'll admit, if NetherRealm wasn't owned by Warner Brothers, I'd probably be way more willing to say, no, let them cook. Or, hey, they fumbled on the first one, but they can pick it up with the next game. But sadly, we live in the reality where they are owned by Warner Brothers. And because of that, I looked at these two story modes and I'm starting to think, oh, we might be in trouble. But you know what? Even if a franchise is in trouble, it can always make a comeback. And speaking of comebacks, folks, sometimes you gotta go a long ways to make a segue work. This was also the month when Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection came out. And holy crap, it's perfect. The game runs great online. It's a damn near perfect arcade port. All the bonus stuff in there is awesome. And the greatest thing of all, it actually exists. This was the dream collection that so many people wanted, and they wanted it so badly, they probably would have just taken anything. As long as you didn't screw it up too bad, I think most people would have been happy with it. Well, it's here now, and not only did they not screw it up, they knocked it out of the park. You want to know how good this port is? When this collection came out, I saw so many people saying, dude, people will play it for a week and then everyone's going to go back to Fightcade. First off, not only does that severely underestimate how many people don't use Fightcade because either they don't know how, they don't like gaming on their PC, or they just don't know what it is. And secondly, so many people said that when this game comes out, everybody would just go back to Fightcade. And I say this from 4 months in the future. Turns out they didn't. Fightcade is great, no smack-talking Fightcade. But Fightcade always existed because we couldn't get the good official ports. It was always the best we could get because the official outlets didn't give us what we wanted. Capcom finally gave us what we wanted. So many of those MVC champs who have been playing this thing for 2 decades now are playing the collection and they're playing ranked mode and they're getting way up there. Whether you're a casual fan or a diehard pro, this collection was a success. And after asking for it for so long, damn, that feels good to say. Also, it just occurred to me, Capcom games, especially their fighting games, are famous for getting leaked early. How the hell did nobody leak this early? It is crazy that we didn't know about this game until the reveal. One of the biggest fighting game reveals of all time, which would have required the cooperation of 2 separate studios, and we all got to experience it without anyone spoiling it for us. We all got that moment together at the exact same time of seeing the coolest thing we could imagine. That is pure magic, and it reminds you of why these big reveal events are so special. On to October, and shockingly enough, there wasn't any DLC this month. I'm just kidding, there was a metric truck ton. Queen Dizzy was added to Guilty Gear Strive, big fan favorite character, and I love that Strive is showing all these fighters growing and progressing as characters. Like I said, Daisuke really cares about these characters, and it feels like with Strive, he wanted to make sure that they all reached a new level of their progression. And Dizzy is no exception, she's definitely more mature and confident than previous games. Although when it comes to her actual playstyle, she's now got this weird new ice physics mechanic in the game. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. Vikala was added to Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. I know nothing about this character, but I've said for years Arxis is the best in the business at giving their characters personality in their animations. And holy cow, this is the perfect example of that. Every single attack from this character is exploding with personality. Her basic throw has more charm to it than most characters' entire moveset. She runs in on you and then takes a photo with you while you have mouse ears on and she's doing the heart emote. Dear God, they went all in on this character. Then Nubia got added to Multiverses. Interesting choice. I was not expecting Multiverses to get such an obscure character. If they had a combo character, I figured they would play it safe and stick just with the characters in movies and shows that everybody knows. But you know what, I'm always in favor of the more obscure characters, so yeah, sure, why not? Then 2 new fighters got added to Mistroscopy. Well, kind of, they had been in the game before, but now they were playable. Evangeline and Ada and Yolanda, which is technically 1 fighter, but they're made up of 2 characters. But best of all, every character in Mistroscopy got a free story mode ad. How the heck is this game pumping out so much content for free? Then the big DLC this month was Heihachi Mishima is not dead. Heihachi returns, and I'm fine with him coming back into the game. I'm not fine with him coming back in the story. Yeah, it's a fighting game. Of course, you want to bring important characters back because they're someone's main, their favorite. That's totally fine. But did you have to bring him back in the story? Even when given the biggest possible ending he could ever get, with a story dedicated entirely to him dying, he still came back. I know people are going to say, none of this stuff matters. Fighting games are just about the gameplay, or you know how much Harada loves to mess with people. We should have all seen this coming. But dang it, man. Tekken always felt like it did have a story that was building up to a point. So to come in here and say, hey, you know that massive climax to one of the longest running rivalries in video game history that was presented in a truly epic manner with a finale that brought back all these different elements from the previous games? Yeah, it didn't actually happen. Can't lie. A little bit bummed about that. Especially because they didn't even try to justify him coming back. They just said a monk jumped in and grabbed him before he hit the lava. Dude, Kazuya was watching you fall into that volcano. Does Kazuya need glasses? Is the Devil Gene messing with his eyesight? Like, I get it. You want to have this important character return. But why can't you just do what Fatal Fury did with Geese? Where he dies, but then he returns in later games as a bad dream someone has. Heck, Tekken 8's whole story is about selling things between Kazuya and Jin. You mean to tell me you can't just have a moment where Kazuya has a vision or a memory of Heihachi? You can totally have your cake and eat it too on this one. Kill the character off so that way the story progresses, but then have a character have a memory or flashback of them so that way there's an excuse for them to be playable in the new game. But Heihachi did return with a brand new story DLC, which is very clearly part 1 of something. I don't know if they have another part planned for this game that's going to come next season. I don't know if this is all setting up for Tekken 9, but this is definitely a to-be-continued situation. It shows that Heihachi got amnesia after his fight with Kazuya, and he was trained by some monks and recognized that he had a darkness inside of himself that he had to destroy. Only to then have a meteorite fall down out of nowhere. Heihachi then destroys it by headbutting it, and much like Fred Flintstone, the second bump on the head caused him to gain all of his memories back. And now he's evil all over again and stronger than ever. Damn, Harada, you really just won Heihachi back and you didn't care how he got here, did you? But let's move on. We got 2 real quick stories here. Street Fighter 6 had a Darkstalkers Battle Pass where you could earn a John Talbane skin. Normally I would not cover just a new Battle Pass, but it's Darkstalkers, it's John Talbane. I had to mention it. And in sadder news, KOF All-Stars came to an end. This was a surprisingly decent mobile game beat-em-up that lasted way longer than I think most people expected it to. And it had tons of big-name crossovers that probably helped introduce a lot of people to KOF. It was a free mobile game, so it was never going to last forever, but I salute it for being around for so long that it helped to spread the good word of KOF. But then we got a few teases of some new games. Corrupt got a beta test. This is a game that I've been hearing about for a while, and the combat looks pretty good, but it ended up getting a full release later this year, so I'll wait to talk about it then. Then Knockoff, a new indie fighter where you play as action figures dripping in 80s and 90s nostalgia, got a demo and announced a Kickstarter. A Kickstarter that sadly didn't hit its goal. Yeah, I know a lot of people are looking forward to this game, but sadly, well, what can I say? It cost a whole lot of money to make a video game, and it can be really hard for an indie fighter to raise that. But I do hope that they stick with it and get the game out because this thing is loaded with charm and I do want to see what they have planned for it. But now it's time to talk about the actual new releases, and this might be the biggest month this year for new games. First up, speaking of indie fighters that failed to hit their Kickstarter goals but stuck around, Terrordrome officially launched this month. Okay, so long story short, these developers made a fighting game called Terrordrome that was a fighting game crossing over tons of horror icons. Problem is, they didn't own those horror icons, so they couldn't make money off the game. So they launched a Kickstarter for a new Terrordrome game that would feature monsters from within the public domain. However, the Kickstarter didn't succeed, so they said, well, we're still going to make the game, it's just going to take longer. And so this game has been in early access for years now, and this month it finally officially launched. And you know what? The game is fun. I will admit I'm biased because if you make a fighting game featuring monsters, I'm already like 75% invested, but I do think that the game is actually pretty entertaining. It's got some solid combos, they gave each character an arcade mode with unique intros and outros, There's a sprinkling of some cool ideas in here, like each character has a super that if you finish the match with it, it then turns into a fatality. That is a great idea. However, yeah, it's got some technical issues. Nothing that breaks the game. No, I can still play it just fine. But the animations are pretty stiff. I can definitely tell they worked on it over the years. It does look better than it used to, but still isn't that smooth. And the audio is really weird. Some characters are just way louder than the others.
You weak cannot fight me.
I can sense your blood.
And I have to say, they could have done way more with these characters. I get that they're using characters within the public domain or vague references to other properties, but you can spruce them up a bit. Like, there's a Frankenstein in here. That is just your classic Frankenstein. There's a Sasquatch in here. It's just a Sasquatch. You could have given them more details to spice them up. You could have given them something special to make them unique. I mean, they include Mr. Hyde in here. It's just a shirtless buff dude. I don't want to be too mean to these developers, but guys, it's animation. You can kind of do whatever you want. And this feels like the Mr. Hyde I would create if I had to do it live action and I had no budget, so I had to think of which of my friends was kind of in shape and wouldn't mind taking their shirt off. Characters really help to sell fighting games, and these ones needed another pass. But I do applaud these developers for sticking with it and working so hard to get this game out, and I do recommend checking it out. Next up, speaking of games that people have been waiting to play, Blazing Strike finally released this month. I don't even remember the first time that I heard about this game, maybe like 2019? I definitely remember that the first release date I heard for it was 2021. And then in 2021 we got a trailer saying 2022. Then in 2022 at EVO we got a new trailer saying Spring 2023. And now it's releasing in late 2024. That definitely raises some questions. I follow the game's artist on Twitter, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouths, but I definitely remember seeing a couple of posts over the years that kind of implies there were some problems that they couldn't talk about. And granted, if the game was going to come out in 2021 or 2022, that means they were working on it during 2020 during the pandemic. So of course, something was likely to come up that would cause the game to get delayed. But it didn't get delayed a year, it got delayed until 2024. That's the kind of delay that implies problems. And now that it's finally out, I hate saying this because it is clearly a passion project. And hey, again, always have to say this. They did actually make a game, and that is no small feat. I never made a game. They're doing better than me on that. But I have to be honest, and playing this game feels like the publisher ArcSys came to them and said, it's been years, you have to actually finally put this out. We don't care how it plays, it's launching this month. Alright, let's start with the positives. The characters look awesome. This game has some of the best character designs of any game I have seen in a while. That's literally the exact reason I was drawn to this game. Hell, I'd be willing to say that's why most people were interested in this game. The characters look so cool. And sadly, that is about where my praise ends. When it comes to the presentation, I said the character designs are amazing, but the actual in-game sprites are very hit or miss. Some of them look perfect and do a wonderful job of interpreting these characters into the game, and then some of them are just really kind of bland. And the sound isn't much better, the music isn't very memorable, and the announcer...
Blazing Strike!
That is the sound that greets you every single time that you turn this game on, and it immediately makes you want to turn it off before you even start playing. It sounds like they were purposely going for that radical 90s video game announcer sound, and that's a fun idea, but you have to also make that announcer charming. They lean so hard into this idea that it's just grating, and when you play through the game multiple times, you will learn to hate this voice real quick. And as for the actual gameplay, there's some fun stuff in here, but it feels like the fun stuff is fighting against the core idea of the game. You have this thing in the game called the Rush Meter, and you can do some simple basic attacks and special moves all on your own. But if you hold down the rush button, then you can do auto combos or special attacks that will lead to floor and wall bounces. It's kind of similar to the drive gauge in Street Fighter 6. The big difference though is that the combat in this game without the rush button is way too simple. It feels like you need to be holding the rush button down at all times. Problem is, if your rush bar drops to 0, you're stunned. Not you can't use your rush moves for a limited time, not you take more damage for a limited time. No, you're stunned because you played the game too much. Getting stunned is something that should happen to you in a fighting game because you got beat up too much, not because you were doing too much beating up. That is way too strict of a punishment, especially because one of the most important things in fighting games is movement. And in this game, you can't run, dash, or backdash. You can only walk unless you're holding down the rush button. Yes, you need the rush button just to do backdashes. Just to do anything other than walk. But if you do it too much, you're stunned. Getting stunned for dashing too much isn't punishing someone for overusing a mechanic, that's punishing someone for playing the game. If you're going to give a character a special meter, you want that special meter to make them feel strong. Not make them feel normal, because then when they're not using it, they feel weak. You can also use the rush meter to do some kind of a parry that can stop your opponent's combo, which is very, very important because almost every character has an infinite. And here's the thing, apparently that's on purpose. I saw the game's social media account talking about using this to break combos that keep going on, and I was like, wait, so does that mean these infinites were put in here on purpose because you figured you could just give everyone a way to break them? I mean, Skullgirls did something kind of similar to that, so I can see the appeal of it. Problem is, I couldn't find anything in the game that told me that's how this worked. I had to learn about through their social media. And also, I said Skullgirls did something kind of similar to this, but the infinites in Skullgirl are complicated. You have to know exactly what you're doing to pull them off. In here, the infinites are way too easy to do. I had someone online doing an infinite on me, and it was just like a simple 3-hit string over and over and over again. An infinite should take more work than just 3 moves. But then again, hey, as I said, there is a mechanic in the game to prevent that from happening. Unless you're playing Alexander, then he just has a pure infinite. Yeah, the grappler of the game, Alexander, has a running throw, and he can get to you before you can get off the ground to react to it, meaning he can throw you, then just do the running throw again, grab you as you get up, then just do the running throw again, repeat infinitely, hope that your opponent drops the combo. I'm going to be real with you guys. I didn't know that was a thing when I recorded this script, but I'm editing it right now during Frosty Faustines, and I thought to myself, you know what, I'm probably being way too mean on Blazing Strike. It's got some heart in there. They tried, I guess. You know, it's probably got something cool in there. It's probably got something cool in there that I do not know about. And hey, look at that. Frosty Faustines is hosting a Blazing Strike tournament. I'm going to watch that, and I'm going to see all the cool stuff that you can do in this game. And oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Yeah, it was not a great look for Blazing Strike, and it kind of cemented my opinion on this game. In fact, I will let you guys in on another little behind-the-scenes story about the making of this video. I commissioned the thumbnail for this the day before Blazing Strike came out, and I was going to have a Blazing Strike character in there because I thought to myself, yeah, it's the big indie game of the year, and I want to help promote some indie games. So absolutely, go ahead and put a Blazing Strike character on that thumbnail. And then the next day, I played Blazing Strike for about 2 hours, and then I immediately had to contact the artist and say, hey, is it too late to change what characters are on that thumbnail? Can we shove Goku in there? Is there space for Goku? Well, as I said, Blazing Strike was probably the most hyped up indie release of the year. But if there's one other game that could possibly take that title away, it's Rivals 2. Yes, the sequels to Rivals of Aether, which had a massively successful Kickstarter last year, launched this month, and I'm going to go ahead and warn you all right now, this game is fantastic, and I am terrible at it. Yeah, the only other platform fighters I play are Smash Bros, and I dabbled in Multiverses this year, but playing this made me quickly realize, oh, those are baby platform fighters. This is the platform fighter for people with hair on their chest. Yes, that was a joke about how all the fighters are animals, thank you for noticing. Yeah, years of playing Smash did not prepare me for a game that moves this quick. Not just on the stages, but especially when you need to recover. The moment I fall off a stage in this game, I am just gone. I need to have those reaction times down to jump up onto the wall, then jump off the wall, and then do my recovery move to get back up on stage. But in case somebody thinks that's a problem, certainly not. When I played this, I thought, oh, I bet this thing gets crazy at high competitive levels. And it looks gorgeous. They nailed the exact art style that they were going for. I could see a whole animated series with these character models in it. It is insane to think in just one installment, they went from super old school pixels to this. This team deserves a ton of applause. Now, that being said, I will admit it isn't loaded with content right now. I mean, yeah, it's alright. It's got an arcade mode with break the targets and some other unique things to spice it up, and that's fine. But it's not a ton. But I do know that they have more planned for the future, so I look forward to what they have in store. But the big release this month was Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Yes, the return of the legendary Sparking series, or Budokai Tenkaichi as it was known in the West. I grew up a big fan of this series, but as I have pointed out before, I did kind of fall out of favor with anime arena fighters. But I am still very happy to see this return. And just as you would expect from a Sparking game, the roster is massive. Even if you don't count repeat characters as separate slots, it is still huge. And they brought back the alternate paths in the story and the what-if scenarios, which I will say this until I am blue in the face. Every fighting game based on an existing property that isn't telling a brand new original story needs to do this. I've heard from people out there who say they love when a game recaps the show because they might not know the show and this helps them to get into it. But speaking personally, I do know the show. I know Dragon Ball very well. And I can say after all these years, I have zero interest in killing Raditz again. I have watched that dude die so many times, I'm starting to feel bad for him. However, if you tell me there's a new way to go about this story, and I can change it around and go down a totally new path, heck yeah, I will jump into that story mode so quickly to see what I can change. Upcoming Bleach fighting game? Take notes. And this time around, not all the what-ifs are great, but some of them are really darn good. No spoilers, but I love the one they did with Gohan. That one is so creative. And I love that they put a mode in here where you can just make up your own what-if scenarios. Like, they look at all the people on YouTube making videos about what if Goku was betrayed and locked in the hyperbolic time chamber. Yes, that is a real thing that people make videos on for some reason. And they said, there is clearly a market for Dragon Ball fans making fanfics. Let's capitalize on that. And when it comes to the combat, again, just going to repeat myself, I'm not really an arena fighter fan, but I went into the training mode, went through the whole tutorial, and I was shocked at how in-depth this got. I had to keep going back to stuff saying, wait, hold on, what was that? If I'm in this situation, I do this to do what now? There are so many defensive mechanics that are only there for specific situations, so many button combinations that do a totally different move. I'm really impressed with it. However, I should point out, not everyone is impressed. Yeah, listen, with any game, not everyone is going to love it. But I do have to specifically talk about this because I saw so many people who were excited for this game. And they love the old Sparking games. And they spent months and years hyping this up. And now that the game has been out for a few months, I've seen so many of those same people now saying, dude, what is this? I don't want this. And I hear that and I turn into that dad from SpongeBob. Then why did you ask for it? Yeah, I have heard people saying, this isn't like the old Sparking games. No, dude, it's exactly like the old Sparking games. And the old Sparking games were busted and wacky as hell. I keep hearing people say, the characters are so unbalanced. Some characters are just way better than the others. Of course they are, it's a Sparking game. But there are these stupid mechanics like big unblockable attacks. Yep, that's a Sparking game alright. but it takes forever to unlock all the characters, and in the middle of the fights, there are these stupid little mini-games that make no sense, and the androids break the whole game, and...
He just won't stop with the social commentary.
Yeah, guys, the sparking games were always wacky and weird, or did you think that violently spinning your thumbstick was optimal game design? The old sparking games were never made to be well-crafted competitive experiences. Sure, you could play them competitively, but that's because everything can be played competitively if you try. A single-player puzzle game can be a heated competitive experience if you find the right crowd for it. But the sparking games were never made with competition in mind. They were made with, oh cool, I can get Gogeta to fight Vegito in mind. You wanna know what Sparking Zero did wrong? You wanna know what the big problem with Sparking Zero is? They added ranked matches. Because sparking games were never made to be played in ranked mode. They were made to be played sitting on the couch with your buddies. And yeah, if you're just messing around with your friends, Sparking Zero is great. Just don't treat it like it's some competitive sport. Which admittedly is hard to do when Bandai Namco is trying to turn into a competitive sport. Yeah, that's the other big story about this game from last year. Bandai Namco tried to turn this into a competitive esport with tournaments with big prize pools, only to quickly learn how terrible of an idea that was. In November, Bandai Namco hosted a dramatic showdown tournament where players around the world would enter into a Sparking Zero tournament to fight for a chance at glory. However, the French finals quickly reminded everyone that they had made the horrible mistake of playing a Dragon Ball Sparking Zero tournament. Two players picked the androids, who have the ability to quick rise into Sin without using up energy. And some less than fair players like to use this mechanic to get a quick health lead on the opponent, then just keep rising and descending so that the opponent can't catch them, running out the clock. Well, these two players said, hey, this is for money, you better believe I'm going to cheese, and they brought the whole tournament to a stop as they just rose and descended, essentially embarrassing the game in front of the entire world.
Yeah, I mean, you guys want to see the match? We were watching them fly up and down, guys.
Wait, what match? Wait, we started the finals?
We started the finals?
We started?
I didn't see that. Like, I didn't
see a single punch. I just saw a couple fellas.
That was like a button check, right?
Yeah.
Bandai Namco punished these two players, and I'm sorry, Bandai, my brother and Kami, you made the game! How you gonna punish someone for using the mechanic you created? They didn't tell you to take a sparking game and try and make it a competitive esport, that was your idea. If you go to an area that is clearly labeled, warning, there are bears here, do not bring out your picnic baskets, and then you bring out a bunch of picnic baskets, you can't be mad at the bear when it shows up and eats it. Same thing here, if you are told these are competitive players, they will do what it takes to win that prize money. Do not give them a bunch of busted mechanics in a game. They will use them. I said in our Street Fighter retrospective that Street Fighter V helped to usher in the current era of live service esports fighting games, and I said that was a good and bad thing, and this is a great example of that. It's good because developers are more willing to bring back some older franchises, like the Sparking series. But it's also bad because now they think everything should be a competitive esport even when it shouldn't. Like the Sparking series. I think it's great that this game exists, and yes, I understand those people out there wanting a more competitive experience. However, if you want a more competitive experience, and you also want the crazy, insane Sparking series that you remember, I got news for you. You might have to choose one or the other, and I think a lot of people don't know which one they want. But honestly, for what it is, I'm pretty happy with what we got. Hey, that Sparking Zero tournament I mentioned happened in November, and wouldn't you know it, that's our next month. Weird how that worked out. Starting out with DLC, Devesha was added to Pocket Bravery. This game was made by huge SNK fans, so of course they were going to eventually add an evil version of their protagonist. It was practically fate. Although, speaking of Devesha, I should probably bring up the elephant in the room. When Pocket Bravery announced its first DLC character, it showed off its roadmap for its upcoming characters. And the third character was going to be someone named Son. But then when the trailer for its second character went up, Son was gone, and now Devesha was in there as the third character. So, what happened to Son? Throughout the year, the developers actually hosted multiple live streams on which they were actually animating the brand new character Son. So maybe the answer to that question lies in there, but unfortunately all those live streams were in Portuguese and I can't find a translation, so for now it's going to remain a mystery for me. Then Ultraman Rising was added to Gigabash. Yeah, you know that Ultraman cartoon with the adorable baby kaiju? That's in Gigabash now. So I will repeat myself once again, please show this game some love. What else do they need to give you? Gamera? King Kong? Actually, that would be kind of dope. Can we make that happen? Get on that Gigabash. Then Ghostface, the first guest character of Season 2, was added to Mortal Kombat 1. I am a big horror movie fan, I'm a big Scream fan, and while I will admit, I'm pretty much done with MK1 right now, I don't really know what character they could add to make me come back to it. I did watch some footage of Ghostface, and he's got some nice nods to the Scream series in his moveset, so I'm pretty happy with it. Also, when it comes to their guest characters, the pre-fight interactions are very hit or miss. Half of them are always just saying stuff from their movies or just generic throwaway lines. But the other half of the lines tend to be pretty good, and I have to admit, Ghostface has some good ones. When you do a mirror match with him and he says,
"Is that you, Billy?" "Of course it is, Stu."
Yeah, I can't lie, that put a big smile on my face. And I have heard MK fans say they really like how he plays. I've heard them say that he plays exactly like what they have been wanting MK1 to play like. And hey, I am very happy for you. But we're deep into this video, I feel like I can get a little bit controversial at this point. Yes, I have heard MK fans say, this is what I've been waiting for, this is how I want a character to play in this game. But I've heard them say that like 4 times in a row now. I heard that with Takeda, I heard that with Noob Saibot, I even heard that with Homelander. So I'm starting to wonder what exactly is going on here. Are these characters only fun at first and then they get dull really quickly? Has the constant string of DLC in this live service era left us with 0 attention span so we forget these characters in a week? Or do MK fans not know what they want out of this game? Are they just not happy with MK1 and they can't figure out why? So when a new character comes out they say, yes, this is the one that will make me happy. And then after a few weeks, that thing that they didn't like about the game is still there, and no amount of new characters is going to fix that. Trust me guys, I get it. I'm a Street Fighter fan, and I spent the first 4 years of Street Fighter V's life saying, aha, this is the character that will get me to like this game. And yeah, that never happened. Listen, I'm not trying to start anything, I'm just saying after I have heard 4 times in a row now, this is what I was waiting for, I have to finally ask, is he though? And then the final new DLC this month, Season 4 Multiverses began, introducing Marceline the Vampire Queen and Raven from the Teen Titans. How is this the November update? This had to have been scheduled for Halloween, right? Well, scheduling aside, these are 2 really good inclusions. Massive fan favorite characters, 2 big faces from some popular franchises. These are the type of characters that this game needed to bring people back in. Unfortunately, it might be too late, because the other story this month about Multiverses is that in an earnings call, everyone's 3rd most hated billionaire, David Zaslav, said that Warner Brothers game division lost $100 million in 2024, and he said one of the biggest reasons for that was Multiverses massively underperforming. There is so much baggage in that sentence, I don't even know how to begin unpacking it. Holy crap. Warner Brothers Game Division lost $100 million in 2024. I once got fired from a job because I didn't meet my sales goal 2 days in a row. This dude costs Warner Brothers hundreds of millions of dollars every single month, and he continues to get raises. Is this a producer situation? It feels like it has to be a producer situation. I've heard people say they have to be doing some money laundering because no way did this game cost $100 million. Well, okay, first off, Multiverses itself did not lose that entire $100 million. Their game division did, and Multiverses is what Zaslav said was the main reason for that. But you guys have to remember, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League also came out this year, and we all know that lost money. And there have also been some rumors going around that that second season of DLC has not been selling for Mortal Kombat like they wanted it to. So yes, that $100 million did not come just from Multiverses. However, in a year where Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League came out, the idea that Multiverses still lost them more money than that is crazy. And when you look at the game, you start to understand why. I mean, there's a lot more that went into this game's production than we like to think about. I mean, for starters, they had to buy this whole studio. Then there's a bunch of characters in there who Warner Brothers doesn't fully own, so to use them, they still have to pay other people to put them in the game. Not to mention all the high-level actors who they paid to come in here and record lines for it. Then think about how long this game was in development for. Then think about how long it was in development for again after they took it down. Then think about how they decided, screw it, let's put everything on a brand new engine. I can guarantee you that's not cheap. So yeah, when you start to add all that up, you start to see where a lot of money went. So yes, MultiVersus lost Warner Brothers a lot of money, and let's not mince words on this. Part of that is because, as we said earlier, the combat is being met very hot and cold. Often at the same time. People love it, people hate it, people love and hate it. But, end of the day, the reason this lost so much money is because this is a free-to-play game. Meaning the money that they were going to make from it was going to come entirely from microtransactions, and those microtransactions are absolutely horrendous. I already covered it all, I don't need to remind everyone, but the moral here is that people have now faced so many greedy microtransactions in games that if they look at something and immediately say, wow, that's really greedy, they're going to move on. If you want to lure in customers to buy your in-game purchases, you have to treat them like luring over a deer. Be nice and quiet, no sudden movements, put out your hand real friendly and show them you're not a threat. MultiVersus came in here banging symbols together shouting about gems and 9 different kinds of currencies, and yeah, the deer ran off, never to be seen again. I talked about this on Blue Sky and someone said, I'm a fan of this game, but even the other players in the subreddit are getting fed up with this. It could not be more clear that the number one thing keeping this game from making money is how you're trying to make money. Speaking of MultiVersus, the Game Awards were announced in November, and wow, I'd say this was the worst year for fighting game nominees, but then I remember Sifu got nominated once, so at least all of these games were fighting games. MultiVersus got nominated despite already having been nominated and won 2 years ago for that beta nobody knew was a beta. Then the Marvel vs. Capcom collection was nominated, which, hey, don't get me wrong, it's an amazing collection, but it is a collection of 20-year-old games. Should that really get nominated with all the new games? Shouldn't they just make a category for best re-release or collection? And what's worse is the stuff that didn't get nominated. Rivals 2, one of the biggest fighting game indie releases in a while, got nothing. Under Night and Birth 2 was at EVO this year, meaning the people coming up with the nominations for Best Fighting Game of the Year didn't even think to Google what games were at EVO this year. It is so obvious that the people who were deciding what were the 5 best fighting games of the year couldn't think up 5 fighting games that came out this year. I'm mostly bringing this up because if you were wondering why I suddenly decided to start doing this annual video of looking back at fighting games from the previous year, the Game Awards, that's why. I got so ticked off at how the Game Awards treated fighting games, I said, God damn it, somebody needs to actually talk about what games came out each year. Although, speaking of games getting re-released, this month Rage of the Dragons Neo was released. This is a re-release of the classic arcade game that I have been waiting on for so long. This thing was announced so far back, I don't even remember when I first started hearing about it. But now Cubyte has finally put it out, and damn, Cubyte is doing some amazing work re-releasing these older games. They did the Breakers collection last year, and that was great. And now I can put Rage of the Dragons Neo up there as well. Full disclosure though, Cubyte actually reached out to me and gave me a code for this game. I didn't ask them for it, they just sent it to me. So I know someone out there might be thinking that I'm being biased because of that, but I assure you, I've been given other free codes before for games that I haven't liked, and yeah, I still talk negatively about them. But luckily, I don't have to do that here because Rage of the Dragons is incredibly fun and this is a great port of it. They even include a brand new game mode called Dragon's Challenge, which is a series of fights back-to-back with certain challenges. This is the stuff that I love to see. They not only made a faithful port of the classic game, so that way you can still have that again, but they added something new to it to make it a truly unique experience. If you have never checked out Rage of the Dragons, I highly recommend it. I had only played this once a long time ago, so this was my first chance to really sit down and tinker with it, and I ended up loving it. Then a smaller release, there's an indie game out there called Blue Blood Arena. Remember that Among Us fan-made fighting game from a few years back? Yeah, this is being made by those same developers. It's their own original fighting game. Well, this month they launched a Patreon, which includes a demo for the game for any of their backers. The game looks really cute, I dig the character design, the combat looks like a lot of fun, so I'm looking forward to where it goes. Then the final story of the month, head of Sega's Transmedia Projects, Jason Scarponi, confirmed in a throwaway line that a new Virtua Fighter was in development. Yeah, it was this real quick, oh yeah, Sega's working on a lot of stuff. We got this game that you already know about, this game that you already know about, a brand new Virtua Fighter, this game that you already know about. And I was so curious about this because people had been speculating for years that a new Virtua Fighter was on the way, but Sega was being real tight-lipped on that. But then a few days after this, it was confirmed that Virtua Fighter Revo was coming to PC, which was going to be an updated version of that last updated version of Virtua Fighter 5, but now it would actually have good online. And this got so many people curious because, again, Scarponi wasn't a developer, so he wouldn't be working on a new game. He'd just be there to talk about if it did get announced. So why was he now talking about this thing like it had already been announced? He said this like everybody was supposed to know this game already existed, so when Virtua Fighter Revo got announced a few days later, everyone was like, so is this what you were talking about? Are we not actually getting a new Virtua Fighter, just another port? Did he get confused and thought this had already been announced? That's the most logical explanation. And yeah, honestly, I think that might have been the case, because listen, I know everyone says that last Virtua Fighter got a lot of downloads. True, but it was downloaded for free. So whether or not it was a success would be decided by how much people bought the microtransactions. And I honestly don't think a lot of people did that. So I was a bit nervous. I kept thinking the game probably didn't sell enough, and I was convinced this new re-release is what he was talking about. The odds of an actual new Virtua Fighter coming out wasn't likely. Nope, I can honestly say I wasn't. Oh my god, guys, can you believe it? We finally made it to December. Let's go ahead and get this one out of the way right now. Yes, I was wrong about the new Virtua Fighter. I was super wrong. I wasn't just saying all that stuff for a setup. That's actually what I thought was happening. I did not think that a new Virtua Fighter was happening, no matter how many people told me it was certain. But no, it's here. The Virtua Fighter 6 is real. At the moment, we don't really know that much, but it is being made by RGG, the studio behind the Yakuza games, and we know that Akira looks really different. Virtua Fighter has probably had the least amount of lore and story out of any major fighting game series. That was never the point of Virtua Fighter, so I'm not used to asking the question, hey, what happened to that Virtua Fighter character? But one look at Akira, and something happened to that Virtua Fighter character. And RGG is an expert at storytelling. The Yakuza games have amazing stories. So could we actually get a Virtua Fighter with a story behind it? Well, hey, the important thing is the combat. Again, we don't really know anything yet. We have hardly seen anything, just basically a few seconds of a tech demo. And damn, this looks insane. Virtua Fighter has always been easy to learn and impossible to master. And again, it's just a few seconds. But I can see just from this little bit how insanely deep this game could get. KOF 15 had Vice and Mature, who would be the final characters for the game, and they would be included in a brand new complete package called KOF 15 Ultimate Edition. And now that's all over, yeah, I still stand by what I said years ago. This is in my top 3 favorite KOFs. It is great, and this roster is now really impressive. Speaking of KOF, as part of the 30th anniversary celebration, they announced KOF Studios, a section of SNK dedicated entirely to fighting games. Which, yeah, that's cool and all, but all I could think was, isn't that just SNK? SNK for a long time now has just been fighting games and occasionally some Metal Slug. Yeah, I don't look at this and I think, oh wow, we're going to get all these fighting games from them now. No, we were already getting tons of fighting games from SNK, and I am very happy about that. So I look at this and I go, wow, if SNK is putting all their fighting games in a separate division, they must have something really big planned for their main division. We already know that they now have a wandering action RPG involving Samurai Showdown, so what else is on the way? But now to balance out the good news with some bad, because as SNK grows, NetherRealm shrinks. Mortal Kombat 1 announced with Season 2 that they had plans to support this game for years to come. But this month, only halfway through Season 2, they announced they were going to have to cancel those plans because thanks to many different factors, whether it be responding to low sales on the DLC, having to cover the cost of other games' losses, or just Warner Brothers being Warner Brothers, support for this game is going to have to end prematurely, and instead it's been revealed that Warner Brothers only wants NetherRealm to make Mortal Kombat now, which means for anyone still waiting on Injustice 3, yeah, that ain't happening. And speaking of cancellations, remember that Avatar fighting game that was announced all the way back in February? Guess what? It got canceled this month. The year has come full circle now. We started the year without an Avatar fighting game, we are ending the year without an Avatar fighting game. There's been no details on why this happened, but I'd like to imagine it's because Nickelodeon or whoever has the Avatar rights saw what Maximum Entertainment did to them's fighting herds and realized, oh, we can't give these guys our game. So, sad news, there won't be an Avatar fighting game. But hey, good news, there won't be a Maximum Entertainment Avatar fighting game. So it all evens out. And that brings us to the final DLC character in a year loaded with DLC. Clive from Final Fantasy XVI would be joining Tekken 8. There is something going on between the Tekken guys and the Final Fantasy guys. We got Noctis in Tekken 7 and now Clive in Tekken 8. I have so many questions. Did the Tekken guys request Clive? Did they request another Square Enix character and they were told they have to take Clive? Did Square Enix come to them? I know a lot of people were wondering why not Tifa, but the arguments for Tifa being in Tekken didn't really start until like a year or two ago, and all this stuff with Clive would have to have been resolved before that. So if you want Tifa, you're gonna have to give it some more time. I will say Clive looks really good in the game, and his stage is amazing, but Final Fantasy characters in Tekken always feel so weird to me because Tekken is a series where people don't have a lot of crazy powers. There's the people with the devil genes, and then there's everybody else. But then you got Final Fantasy characters coming in here with massive laser beams and transformations and swords appearing out of nowheres, and they have summons. I know everyone on Earth has already said this, but damn, I wish Soul Calibur was still a thing because Clive would have been such a good fit for that game. Then there were 2 new releases at the end of the year. Earlier I mentioned Corrupt got a beta. Well, it finally came out just a few months later. I've been seeing this game for a little while now, hearing some good stuff, and this month I finally got my hands on it. Now, normally I like to start with the positives, but this time I'm going to flip that, but trust me, you'll see my reason for that in a moment. The negatives are that this game is seriously lacking single-player content. It's got a story mode, but they decided to go to the Guilty Gear school of storytelling because there is no actual combat in it. I sat there waiting for the moment I actually got to play it, and nope, that never happened. And then after that, yeah, there's nothing. There's combo trials, which I will say, lots of indie fighting games don't include those, so that was appreciated. Those do help a lot of players get started with the character and learn what that character is supposed to do, so that's appreciated. But after that, there is nothing in this game. There's not even an arcade mode. If you want to play against the computer, you have to go into versus mode and just do single matches. And as for the art style, it's going to be very hit or miss. Not everyone is going to dig the very 90s cybernetic future style, but there is one thing that I think everyone can agree on, which is the lighting and coloring in this game is a problem. There are a lot of dull colored stages and they just leave the backgrounds looking bland. But there's a handful of night stages and they are shockingly dark, like it's worse than the Helicarrier stage in Marvel 3. But then on the opposite end of that, there's one stage that is shining so bright, the background is glowing. It is so bright, it is distracting. So yeah, I'm not huge on the art style, and there are some stages that are actually a problem, and that's why I wanted to cover the negatives first. Because just looking at this footage, you'll immediately notice it. However, now I come to the positives. And the positives are, this game feels amazing. This game plays so well. The combos are crazy quick, but I was still able to follow along and understand everything that was happening. Linking from one attack to another feels so smooth. I've heard that the creator of this game was a big Marvel 3 fan, and yeah, that definitely comes across. It's got that Marvel 4-button style with the pop-up button and the air combos and the OTGs, but there's still a really good variety between the characters. There's some that are fairly simple, there's some that require tons of setup. I'll admit I bought this game just so I could talk about it in this video, but even after I got enough footage for it, I still wanted to keep testing out every character just to see how each of them played. If you have friends who are big Marvel fans, get this game and play it together. Hell, even if you don't have any friends into Marvel, but you still just really enjoy games that you can take into the lab and test out big crazy combos, check this game out. And you know what? Even if neither of those sound like you, make sure to keep an eye on this game, because if they add more single-player content to the game, I'll recommend it to everyone. But for now, yeah, it still feels like an incomplete game. But a really good incomplete game. And the other new game released this month was Diesel Legacy. I have seen this game at conventions for what feels like 5 years now. I swear I remember seeing it at a PAX before the pandemic. It got to that point where I had seen it at demos so many times that when they said it was finally coming out, I was genuinely shocked. And this is such a unique game. Okay, first off, when it comes to the presentation, this game is gorgeous. It's going for a steampunk gangster prohibition era vibe, and they nailed it. All the characters are diverse and interesting, their animations are great, the fact that the main menu is just a bar that you walk around in to get to each option is so good. Everything about the presentation of this game has just the right amount of charm to it. And there's a solid amount of single-player content with an arcade mode and a really big story mode for each character, full of unique interactions and NPC sprites. I said this game had been in development for a long time, and it shows. There was a ton of work put into this game. And when it comes to the actual combat, there's a lot to unpack here. When it comes to combos and specials and linking stuff together, oh, it's awesome. There's some crazy combo potential in this game. The basic combat is excellent. But there really isn't any such thing as basic combat in this game. Yeah, this is when it gets weird because there is a lot in this game to spice it up. And each of these ideas are really cool and interesting, while also being kind of annoying. Yeah, I don't know if I have been split on any other game this year as much as I am on this one. Because this game includes some unique mechanics, like a portion of any damage you take can be healed back if you wait long enough. And by now, you've probably also noticed that this game uses the lane system. Yeah, not since Fatal Fury have we seen a game that relied on 3 different lanes as much as this one. And I give the developers a lot of credit for trying something so unique. And it can lead to some really crazy mobility. With how far and fast you can dash in this game, you will see characters whipping and zipping all over the stage. Problem is, that also makes it really hard to catch characters. These stages are huge, and you got 3 lanes and super fast dashes. I felt like a good chunk of some of my matches was just me trying to catch the other character. And remember, if you don't get hit for a while, your health will heal back. And it heals back pretty fast, so running away is a viable strategy in this game. There was someone I played against online who picked one of the more agile, quicker characters, and each time they got hit, they would just run around the stage until they were fully healed up. Also, while I'm on that, I only played a few matches online, like 5 or 6, so I can't say this for certain, but I don't know how good this online is. They use rollback, which normally is really good. We have come to associate rollback with meaning good online. But there is such a thing as bad rollback, and when you have bad rollback, you will notice characters doing something, then it just blinks back like 3 or 4 frames, and suddenly that didn't happen. And I ran into that in almost every single one of my matches. Again, I didn't play enough matches to be sure. It could just be that I had a handful of really bad connections in a row. But I definitely ran into this enough times that I feel I do need to bring it up. But here's the other thing to remember. This game is not designed to be one-on-one. I could only find one-on-one matches, so that's how I played it. But this game is intended to be a 2v2 game. It is very weird to me that these guys started working on this game before Multiverses and 2XKO, and it's just by total coincidence that all of these 2v2 games are coming out around the exact same time. But I bring this up because the giant massive stages, how fast your health heals back, how much you can avoid your opponent, these all seem like they would be solved in a 2v2 match. You heal back too fast? Not if 2 people are beating you up at once. The stage is too big? Not if there are 4 characters in it. It's too easy to dodge and avoid being hit? Not if those hits are coming at you from multiple angles with multiple different characters. Yeah, this combat might be perfect for 2v2. I just couldn't test that out. Honestly, I just wish that there was a 1-lane only mode for this game. Yes, I know the game wasn't designed for that, and I do respect the team for trying something so different. But I can't help it. I'm curious to see if adding a 1-lane mode would fix a lot of the 1v1 problems I had with this game. But this game is really weird because even when I'm being annoyed at all this stuff, I still think it's cool. I do think it's cool to have a fast-paced game where you're sliding between lanes. It's such a crazy idea and I can totally see it working. So yeah, check it out if it sounds like your thing. However, as weird as this is going to sound, the most hyped release this month wasn't a new game, it wasn't a DLC, it wasn't a collection, it was a mod. This month, Maximilian Dood's Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite and Beyond mod was released, and we had seen sneak peeks at this throughout the year, but when the final product arrived, we had no idea how big it was actually going to be. Not only does every character look better, but there are so many changes to the stages. There's an actual balance patch, a brand new 2v2 mode, as is the style at the time. The menus now have a ton of personality. They actually got musicians to record brand new themes for all the new characters added in Infinite. And there were so many creative people who were brought together for this game. I said this was Maximilian Dood's mod, but he was just really the face of it. And he did do work on it himself, but he has made sure to let everyone know, no. This was a big collaboration by a bunch of talented people. I remember a stream where Max was talking about how every single character's visual and balance changes were handled by people who main those specific characters, so everyone working on these characters wanted to see them done right. It is incredible seeing how many members of the FGC came together for this. This is honestly one of the biggest love letters to a franchise I've ever seen. The very first time that I saw the menus being shown off in this game, each option has different art popping up for it, and I remember going, oh wow, it's that person and that person. So many artists I follow who are Marvel fans got to do stuff for this game. Heck, one of the biggest Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite fans I have ever seen is this artist Wave-chan, and I flipped when I saw her art pop up on the menu screen. There is just too much to talk about in this game. I said that this was a love letter to this franchise. It's also a love letter to this community. It's the Marvel community coming together to create something brand new. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was the black sheep in a legendary game franchise. But this just shows the dedication and passion of the Marvel community and the FGC as a whole can come together and make magic out of any situation. And I think that is an incredible message to go out on this year. And there you have it after a long journey in which you can obviously tell I destroyed my voice. We have come to the end of 2024. I started this off by saying a lot of people were disappointed with the fighting game scene this year, and to all those people I say, look beyond the few games you've already pumped hundreds of hours into. Every single year, whenever a bunch of brand new games get announced, you always see some streamer who only plays one game over and over again say all video games are bad now. Fighting game fans, don't become that guy. So many games got updated this year, so go and check out that game that you might have dropped or you had forgotten about. So many collections and classics got a chance to live again. So this year, take that opportunity to go and finally play that game you had always heard of but never checked out. And the indie games. Dear God, the indie game scene. It was a veritable cornucopia of games. There are so many amazing indie fighters that came out in 2024. I guess what I'm saying is, yes, 2024 was a good year for fighting games. Because fighting games aren't just 3 titles. It's a big, huge landscape with tons of variety. It's a community that is always growing and changing. It's a history full of classics and fan favorites. and it's endless creativity and passion where you can find something to surprise you every single month. It is also tons of greedy cash grabs, poor decisions, and people with zero idea how to make a live service game work. Hey, I said it was a good year for fighting games, I didn't say it was perfect. Yeah, there were still plenty of problems, but I'm hoping that after sitting through this video, you all found enough good in here to maybe appreciate this year a little bit more. Or maybe you learned of some game that you didn't know about and now you want to give it a chance. Let me know down below. Did you find something that you want to check out? Or what games did you enjoy from last year? What was your favorite news story? Even if it was a game that I hated, go ahead and share it. Don't let me tell you what to like and what not to like. Let me know what game you enjoyed in 2024. And if you like this video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up and subscribe. This is the year that we are going to hit 100K subs. I know it, I can feel it in my bones. So help us do that by hitting that subscribe button and sharing these videos around. But the most important thing that I want everybody out there to do, just take care of yourselves. I don't know what 2025 is going to hold for all of us, but take care of yourselves, take care of your friends. I said it before, but fighting games aren't just games, they're a community. It's people who support each other and have got each other's backs and are there to lift each other up. So thank you to everybody out there who supported me throughout 2024. I hope I can keep entertaining you all throughout 2025, and together we can all keep lifting each other up. Thank you all very much. Stay safe out there, and come back next time.